What's up, everybody? Let's see here. Got some comments already. Let's pull that up. And who's tuning in right now? Who do I have with me here? We'll take a minute just to let everybody kind of populate the stream. We'll get this thing rolling. Hope everybody's having a good day so far. What's going on, Phil? How's it going, man? Soon to be my best time here in Manchester. Oh man, dude, it's gotta be late out there, man. Tim, what's up, Tim? Jeff, Philip, what's going on, brother? You guys are freaking awesome. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for hanging out, especially considering that we don't have like a big drug topic, right? That's not the headline isn't like, like how to use more PEDs. It's a basic topic, but I'll be honest with you, and I'll get into this, but I have so many people that reach out that are like, hey, how do I use X, Y, and Z compound? And I say, well, let's talk about your diet a little bit. And, like on consultations and stuff. And then I find out they're not even eating a consistent diet. The way I always had looked back at it, the way it was kind of taught to me in bro words, which it always stuck with me, was that the idea of being anabolic is simply more protein going into the muscle cell than is leaving it. I'm like, okay, so I always have to have protein going in. And then I find out anabolic steroids just help you do that even better, But you got to have that protein, right? So I kind of made that, I gamified it, I guess, And so before I even got onto a fixed, consistent plan, I made sure that I ate protein like as many times a day as I could, like 6 meals a day. And like, even if I wasn't hungry, I'm like, give me that chicken breast, give me that dozen egg whites. I just got to eat this. I got to get 50 grams in, and over time, it turned into something. So figure we'll just give it just a minute here to let some people join. Holy crap. We've got 66 people already. I don't know if this is a good time for you guys. I figured everybody over in Europe and England, it's getting a little bit late over there. So if you are tuning in from those places, I appreciate you guys staying up late. Don't lose any sleep. Like this will be here. You can watch it tomorrow. It'll still be up. And everybody else, everybody from the States and Canada, you guys are freaking awesome. Thank you for hanging out and joining me. I want this just to be a thing where it's just us. We're just going to take some time here. And man, we can do this for like a couple hours if you guys want to keep going. If you get tired of me, we don't have anything else to talk about. We can leave sooner, but we can drag this out. We can talk about everything, bodybuilding, off topic, nutrition, gear, training, everything, you guys just let me know. But before we did, the main thing that I really wanted to talk about was just work that I do, every day from the coaching perspective. I get to hang out with you guys a lot on the podcasts, which I absolutely love doing. And when I'm not doing that, I'm still sitting here at my desk writing diets. And I do work with a lot of people and consult with people because besides just my nutrition clients, there are people who are just like, hey, I want to hire you for an hour just to help me put together a nutrition plan. Like I don't know what I should be eating exactly, or they want to figure some aspect of bodybuilding out, but like I was starting to say earlier, I run into a lot of people that maybe they have like a already, foundational understanding of PEDs, but they're really missing the boat on the nutrition side of things. And listen, your diet doesn't have to be perfect to be able to make progress. It just has to be better than it was previously. That's the way I've always seen it. But the more you can get out of your diet, the better you're going to feed that trigger for growth. That trigger for growth happens in the gym. Getting some type of a novel stimulus. That's going to be the key to all of this. And then from there, if you are using PEDs, then the PEDs are just going to work all that much more better. I don't think that's real English. I don't think that was right grammar. Right grammar. Anyway. All right. So I'd say this, if somebody comes to me, and here's the thing, I'm not going to give you a math equation. I'm not going to say if you're X amount of pounds, you need X amount of protein. because part of it is going to be like, what can the individual actually handle? If you come to me and you say like, hey, I'll be honest with you. I don't like eating in the morning, which, spoiler alert, nobody who isn't on a fixed diet, a consistent plan, nobody likes eating first thing in the morning. That's something that does take time. But I promise you that if you put work into it and you are consistent with eating in the morning, you're going to start waking up hungry. Okay. And we want that. We want you to be hungry. You might not recognize it, like, out the gate, because you're eating, 4, 5, 6 meals and you're feeling full all the time, but just give it time. Your body will get used to that. Your body will adjust. So anyway, though, I'm getting ahead of myself. So yeah, let's say that somebody comes to me and they're only eating twice a day. They're like, yeah, I get up at 9 and then usually I don't do anything for breakfast. And I eat at, let's say they eat at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then they eat again in the evening, and then they have a snack at night. And that's it. Well, I'm not going to take that guy and say, okay, well, we need to get 45 grams of protein 6 times a day. Like, the likelihood of that guy actually following the diet is pretty slim. But let me tell you this, if he was doing that, if that's all he was doing previously, and then we go to, like, let's say 3 solid food meals a day plus a shake, he's going to make progress. Okay. Is that the optimal diet? No. But you can only grow muscle so fast, is the way that I see it. So and you can only lose fat so fast. So if we can get you like losing at an optimal rate, if you're losing like 2 after that initial jump, like initially you're going to have 5-7 pound fat loss jump, maybe even 10 pounds, depending on what you're eating before. After that jump, if we can get you to, like, say 2 pounds a week, fat loss, scale weight loss, while eating a decent amount of protein, then, you're going to be in a pretty good position. So, I mean, realistically, that's the way I would start somebody out. And over time, they're going to start to get more hungry. Before you know it, we can add, another meal in. So if we were doing, say in the morning, let's call it 2 whole eggs, 3 egg whites, a scoop of protein powder. Okay. Like, I'll call that like the protein foundation of the meal. That's okay. And then we have 2 servings of 5-6 ounces of chicken breast. I'll tell somebody 6 ounces, but if they're not used to eating consistently, I'll say, do what you can, eat as much as you can. And if you can't eat it all, that's okay too. Because with a little bit of time, if you're not eating anything else off plan, you're going to start getting hungry. I promise you that, So now we have that protein in the morning. We've got 5-6 ounces of chicken twice a day. And then maybe we put a shake 50 grams in the evening. It's a foundation. It's not perfect by any means, but think about trying to get somebody who isn't plugged in. Here's the thing, is that with time, I think that we develop, it's almost like it becomes a habit. In fact, I was told at one point it takes 3 weeks to create a new habit. And whether that's true or not, I believe in it. So if I want to make a change in my life, I tell myself, okay, I just have to do this, maybe even white knuckle it for 3 weeks. Okay. And by the time I get through that, it's going to be more ingrained. It's going to be easier to do. It's not as much of that, like that psychic energy that it takes to remember, okay, I have to eat this meal now. Like you get used to it, So, and with that, then we can build it out further. But it's got to start somewhere. So I want anybody out there who's watching our content, maybe they are interested in running PEDs, take a step back. I promise you. We talk about getting the most out of the least, and realistically, the better your diet is, the more consistent you are. That in itself, I guarantee you, that in itself is going to be like the number one most important foundation. Plus, you can't stay on the gear all the time. I guess you kind of can. A lot of people are nowadays, but we shouldn't stay on cycle year round, right? And in the times when you're not on cycle, you still can be gaining, and you'll get more out of the gear too. So, that was kind of my excuse to jump in with you guys here, was, coming up with that mini topic. But I wanted to segue too and talk about everything you guys wanted to talk about. I'll tell you too, it depends on the individual, as far as how many carbs we're going to use. I generally will try to build a diet out with, I'd say if you were that same guy who was only eating 2 times a day, I might put like 150 grams of carbs in the diet. That's it. You weren't really eating much before to begin with. And now we're eating 150 grams of carbs with those 4 meals that I mentioned. And, we'll see what happens from there. And if you get 3 days into the diet and you're like, oh my God, dude, I'm absolutely starving, then absolutely, man, we can increase now. Like, that's okay. The key is just sticking to that diet, You will make progress with it too. So, yeah, I don't know. You guys tell me if you have any questions. I know, so here's the thing. A lot of you guys that watch the show, a lot of you guys are a lot more advanced than that. So I appreciate you bearing with me because, like I said, we also do have an entire demographic of people that aren't following a diet yet, and they are watching our stuff. So I want to make sure that I can go, all the way back to the foundations and talk about that stuff too. I'm seeing you guys are commenting a ton over here. We got UC Sumo with us. We've got Joe with us. I can't even rattle through all these names. Dale. Skeptical Gary. I like that name. Lee Haney said it right. If the food's in its natural form, unprocessed, you can eat it. Yeah, I guess. That's definitely a start. I feel like we've been getting away from the unprocessed foods more and more, with a lot more people, I think, are using the more refined carbs. I know, like, cream of rice is super popular right now. I love cream of rice. I use it with clients, but I don't use it for every meal. It's definitely going to be a much higher glycemic carb. I think there is benefit to using some slower burning carbs at times too, What's going on? We got a freaking whole load of people here. 102 people watching. Scott, are you still in Michigan? I saw your name randomly on a Google review at my gym. What gym was it, man? What gym was it? Yeah, I'm still in Michigan. What's going on, Bill? We got Bill Lally with us here. What else do we have here? You guys start throwing questions at me, and I'd be happy to start working through them. I saw that there were a few at the top. I saw a bunch of questions about insulin. Interestingly, here's one of them. I have a question about insulin in a cutting phase. Can it be combined with Reta, or should increase my Reta? I'll tell you what. You can ask the Lolly in our stream here about his experience of using Reta while using insulin while in a cut. His blood sugar went really low. You got to watch that. Your blood sugar is, if you're dieting already, you're going to have to watch insulin use. That's going to be a major factor. Is there a benefit to insulin when dieting? Yeah, I think there can be. I think that you can get some great additional fullness from that, drive some nutrients into the muscle, help ensure that you're going to get a pump even in a calorie deficit. But I think that there's also limitations. There's limitations, like if you don't get your blood sugar up high enough, you're not going to be able to make benefit out of that before you go hypoglycemic and ruin your workout. Bill, what did your blood sugar get down to? Let's see. I'm sure he's still with us. He'll comment in a minute. But it was scary low, man. So, and he was in a contest prep. We were pushing pretty hard, but he had plenty of food in the diet still. It's just that he was burning through it, and his blood sugar was like constantly in the 70s. So, yeah, the key would be that you would want to check your blood sugar if you were going to use insulin. I would want to know going in. Like, I would check my blood sugar days in advance of using the insulin. Like, I would want to know, okay, so let's say that I have a pre-workout meal stacked with, more of my carbs for the day, assuming that carbs are going to be pretty low. Otherwise, maybe not. Maybe you're eating a lot of carbs and still dieting and getting in shape. If you are, you're one of the lucky ones. Yeah, Bill's blood sugar went down to 29. Like, he freaking was going unconscious and he didn't realize it. He had to have his wife put honey in his mouth. Like, that was a scary text that I got. And it was out of the blue. Like, he was doing all right, and then not doing all right. And we're talking, I can't remember how many carbs he was using, but it was at least 60 plus intra workout. And we're talking like a small amount of insulin, like 2-3 units. So, if your blood sugar is already low and then you take insulin on top of that, you're in for trouble, man. So it's just something I definitely look out for. Also, I think it's an individual thing. Some people I found they need to be off insulin in order to be able to stay in that fat burning state. Depends on the person, I think. But all right, what else do we have here? My progressive overload is amazing, but I don't know if I'm doing too much since I kind of feel crappy outside of the gym. That's a great question, man, or great topic. I'd be curious to hear what you guys say. What do you think about that? I can say that, oh God, we used to train so hard. We had these workouts, like a back workout that would be like 2.5 hours long, and the gym didn't have air conditioning. So you're just like pounding water, and literally your entire shirt was just utterly soaked by the time you're done with the workout, right? And I remember just driving home, and the best way I could describe it was like the feeling like you got in a car crash where like everything's just kind of achy, and my face felt kind of cold. It was this weird just autoimmune thing that would start kicking up after like training, being hardcore, training really hard, yeah, I would say that if you're feeling crappy, I would look at what can you pull back. I would look at, I don't know how often he's training. Sometimes I'll go into these deep explanations with somebody on like, how should we adjust your training? And we're getting into these minute details. And then I find out he's training 6 days a week. I'm like, oh, well, there's your answer there. You need less time in the gym. You got to pull back, maybe go to, 5 days a week. Or if you're training 5 days a week, listen, there's nothing wrong with 4 days. In fact, I told this story recently on the podcast, but my absolute freaking strongest, which was 2018, I started building up my strength and figuring out how to improve my technique, because I decided, like, if this is the one thing I haven't done, I haven't gotten to be like incredibly strong, incredibly strong for me. I knew I had more in me than I had given. So I started that. And by 2020, I remember going to a push-pull leg split. And initially I started 6 days a week. So I was like push-pull legs off, basically. It quickly went down to 5 days. And I fell in love with progressing. Every time I'd get in the gym, I wanted to be able to progress on my dumbbell incline press. My favorite lift. In fact, you guys remember the whole shutdown and all that. I had found a heavy set of dumbbells that I brought to the basement. I brought it down myself too. This rack it's a whole other story trying to get that thing down the stairs. But I got to the point that I gave everything I freaking could, and I knew that when it was time to train again, and I'm supposed to do the same exercise again, I knew that, like, if I don't feel 100% recovered, I don't feel like I'm totally going to be able to oh, I got a super chat. I'll get back to you. Thank you. I don't think I'll be able to do that same thing again plus more. What if I took another day off? What's wrong with that? If I waited one more day, and keep in mind, I'm reminding myself that the trigger for growth happens in the gym. It's from doing a novel stimulus, something that your body's not used to. I could probably clean up. I got 10 reps with the 120-pound dumbbells last time. I got 10 reps. I know I could clean up those last 2 reps that were a little sloppy if I had one more day off. So I took one more day off, right? And guess what? Then I progressed. And I continued to do that, and to the point where I ended up at my at my strongest. I was training 1 day on, 2 days off. And I know when I say that, first thought is like, well, God, I love training. I love being in the gym. And I get that, you know. I spent 15 years being that, even when I felt like, yeah, maybe more rest would help, but I'm going to get in there and train, you know. It really did make that much of a difference. And so now, and some of you guys have heard me tell this story before. Now, I'm at the time in my mid 40s, right? I'm running 600 test, and in the past I had run we'll call it several times that amount. And my diet was just crazy, pushing as much food as I can. Now at this point, I'm not doing that. I'm on 600 tests, and I'm eating protein like 5 times a day. Maybe maybe a tortilla wrap for my carbs. Like, it wasn't special, yet I was at 235 pounds, and I was confident, like, oh yeah, we're getting to 240. I'd never been 240 in my life. Yeah, I was pushing that way, training 1 day on, 2 days off. So I'm telling you, you know, and honestly, you know what it really came down to that made me actually embrace that? It's because I was freaking in my mid 40s. When I started, okay, listen, you get to your mid 40s and you start having conversations with yourself like, if I don't do this now, that means that when I die, I will never have done it. You know, like if you're in your mid 40s and you're watching this now and you haven't gotten into the absolute best shape you can, understand that now's the absolute best time to do it. Like, every year you get older, it's going to get a little bit harder. So just a reminder to you, like, whatever your goal is, if it's getting in shape, if it's getting strong, if it's stepping on stage, like, this is the best year to do it. Next year is going to be a little harder, unless you're watching this and you're 17. Then you've got some good years ahead of you. But by the time you hit like the mid 30s, it's like, okay, yeah, my days are numbered. So my thought would be to him is, you know, question being that he feels crappy outside of the gym, I'd want to back down. So maybe it is backing down the amount of days you train, or maybe it's just backing down the volume. You know, you guys hear the Kuba episodes. I've learned so much hanging out with Kuba on this program. Oh my God. Like, and I think he's learned a lot from Jordan, but then he's taken that, he's applied it to himself, he's seen what's worked for him. And he's definitely a student he's a student of the iron, you know? And, you know, one of the things I really picked up from Kuba was looking at, okay, well, what do we need to pull back? What are the absolute essentials? You know, your heavy compound chest movements, your heavy compound back movements, your pull down, your main row movements, your heavy compound leg movements, you know, hack squat, things like that. Those are the foundations. Like, we want to stay as freaking strong as possible in those exercises all the time, you know? But it's, where can we peel back? Maybe you're feeling a little crappy. Well, how many of those sets are you doing? Are you doing more than you need? If you are, you could probably peel those back. And if you're not, let's say you're doing a top set, back off set with those things. Let's look at your accessory work and your isolation work. You know, do you need to be doing 3 sets of, I don't know, 3 sets of a pec deck? Do you need to be doing as much arm work or as much shoulder work as you're doing? Remember that every time you train your chest, you're also training your shoulders. You're also training your triceps. Every time you train your back, you're also training your biceps. So those body parts are getting hit. And if you are incredibly strong on your back movements, if you're incredibly strong on your chest movements, your shoulders and your triceps and your biceps are all going to continue growing. In fact, I just got that question from a client today. He was like, I feel like my arms, you know, should I do an arm day? I was like, no, we don't need an arm day right now. You need to grow as much mass as you can. And we can do that in those big body parts. And hey, down the road, if your arms are still small, but you have a class winning chest and a class winning back, then we can bring the arms up, So, hey, let me jump to super chats because I see we got 2 of them here. I want to say thank you to you guys. So, thank you very much. I didn't know if you had any questions, but it looks like no. So, pow, wow, 9032. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it very much, man. And I appreciate hanging out with you guys. I appreciate there's like 150 of you here right now. That kind of blows my mind. And I'm wondering, what are you doing? Usually we do these live streams during the middle of the day. This one's kind of late for me. It's like 6 p.m. here in Detroit. And then John STS, thank you very much. 069. I appreciate you, brother. And I'm glad to have you guys here, man. Let me see what else we have here. All right. There's that training intensity question. Okay. Do you see any benefit to running insulin pre and post workout if training 4 days a week? Honestly, gosh, I guess it depends on where you're at. I mean, I've worked with some people where I wouldn't want to use insulin just because they have such a propensity to store body fat. If you're that guy, if you're a guy who, say, used to be 4 bills and now you're 290 and you're still working on getting leaner, don't even worry about insulin. Like, I don't think that we're going to need it. Like, you can still do everything you need without it. Let's take the other extreme. Let's take one of the guys I work with who is a national level men's physique competitor. And guys, don't sleep on these men's physique competitors. This guy is big. He's a big dude. I'd say he's bigger than me, but that doesn't say much anymore, right? He's a big dude. And I'll tell you what, he burns through so much food. I could show you his diet. I mean, just to kind of rattle off what he's currently eating now. And I mean, this isn't crazy. He's like, hold on a second. Let me see if I can pull it up. I'm not going to actually show you the plan, but I'll read you some numbers as to what he's currently eating. All right, let's see. Here's his file, and here is his diet. All right, so let's see. He's eating, 100 grams of cream of rice. That's a dry measurement, plus fruit in meal 1. Taking 4 units of insulin, and then training with 38 carbs. Post-workout, he's having a cup of oats, 2 tablespoons of honey, and 1 bagel with 2 scoops of protein. And then an hour after that, he's having 2 cups of rice and 2 cups of cereal. That's a lot of carbs. He's 232, I think, right now. Like, that's more carbs than some people eat all day. He's making some really good use of some pre-workout insulin there, When carbs get that high, I think there's a massive benefit. But hey, even when carbs are lower, hey, definitely you're getting more nutrient, partitioning. You're getting more, I should just say, you're getting better nutrient shuttling with that insulin in there. But the key is just watching your blood sugar, looking at, well, here's what I would do. I would say I would eat my food, within 1 hour of training, right? And then that's what you want to do with timing up with insulin. Then get in the gym, probably have an intra-workout shake, and then post-workout, before eating my next meal, like right before I eat that next meal, I would want to test my blood sugar and see where it's at. If it's, still up over 100, you're probably going to be all right to start experimenting with 2 units. If you're at 70, post workout, then you can probably handle some more carbs. So yeah, I definitely, though, the question is do you see benefit to it for somebody who trains 4 days a week? Yeah. And I like the idea too of also having days where you're not taking the insulin then on your non-training days. I think that there can be an overuse of it for sure. Let's see what else we have here. All right. There's the insulin and Reddit question we did. All right. What else do we have, guys? Yep. There's the one We covered that. Wow, we already covered a lot of stuff, haven't we? Hey, Scott, been enjoying the content new to things bodybuilding. Right on, Nick. Well, glad to have you, man. Glad that you're here. And I feel like I kind of just blew through that intro topic of how to put a diet together. So if you have more questions that are specific, let me know. I'd be happy to cover it. We got another super chat too here. All right, and I think this one's a question too from Philip. All right, thank you very much. First of all, Philip, I appreciate you, brother, and thank you for being here, man, and thank you for being part of the community. What does he say? He says, I'm cruising at 300 milligrams of test a week. I see my TRT doctor on May 6th. How long before my appointment do I need to back down to my regular dose so that my numbers are in the accepted range? That's a good question, man. Well, let's pull the calendar up here. So if you, right now, what did you say the dates were? Let's see. You're going to see the doctor on May 6th. Realistically, you could get it down in under 2 weeks, realistically. But here's the thing. What else is going to look funky? Are you going to go into that doctor and have your test range perfect in range? Everything looks awesome. But then your hematocrit is spiked and your HDL is low. Like, are you going to go in showing signs of your body being under stress due to testosterone? Because then your doctor is going to look at you and be like, hey, listen, I know your test levels are only at 750, and that's exactly where I want them to be. But, that 750 is causing your hematocrit to be 55, and it's causing your HDL to be crashed. It's one of those situations where I would say the more time, the better. I'd probably honestly, I'd probably stop all injections for a minute and give it 10 days and then start back up on TRT. In that period of time, you're not going to crash. Okay. And start that TRT back up at the prescribed dose. You should be back in range real fast from there. Usually in a cycle situation, I tell people 14 days, but I have a feeling just based off of the 300 milligrams, you give it 10 days and you'd be good to start your TRT back up. If you just switched to your TRT dose, what ends up happening is, you like, if this is normal and this is your high cruise dose, or we'll call it your cycle dose, and then you come off the cycle dose, it starts coming down, but then you take your TRT and it blips it back up a little bit. And then it starts coming down, blips it back up a little bit each shot you take. So it's kind of staggering coming down. It takes a lot longer. It might take, depending on how much gear you're using, it might take you 6 weeks to get back into range. So yeah, coming off cycle, I'd give it 2 weeks. In this situation, I bet you a good 10 days would be good. But honestly, man, May 6th, we'll call it, I like to be conservative with any type of dates. So give myself more time than I thought. So like in a contest prep, if we have 13 weeks, I tell myself we have 12 weeks. And realistically, in that case, we do, because that last week, you're done dieting. But yeah, if it's a little bit more than a month, let's just call it a month from now. It's probably more like 5 weeks. But if you take 10 days off now, go back to your true TRT dose, keep your cardio up, make sure that your hematocrit's in check, all of that stuff, you should be in a solid place. That would be my thought. All right. What else do we have here? And I'll be honest with you. So here's the thing. I found that I ran 300 test for like 2 years straight as my quote unquote cruise dose. And part of it was I was afraid to lose muscle. I don't feel like it really made a massive difference. I think that if you go in and you cycle, push hard with your nutrition and your training, you make good forward progress. I really do believe that in most cases, especially for a lot of your average guys that are, we'll say, under 220 pounds fairly lean, you can come back down to true TRT and support that without a problem. You don't need like a higher cruise dose. So just throwing it out there to you. I know that's probably going to be an unpopular idea, especially in today's age where everybody wants to do some sort of TRT plus and have, the new term is add-ins, right? I think we got that from the TRT clinics. I hear that a lot now. Like, I'm on TRT. What add-ins should I use? What do you mean add-ins? You mean make it into a cycle? We got another super chat here. I don't know if it's a question. Let's see. Oh, yes, it is. It's from Wow 9032. Thank you again, my friend. I appreciate you very much. He says, if macros are equal, is 5 meals better than 3, or just protein timing? Any downside to 3 large meals, 1,000 plus calories? I eat 2 p.m. To midnight. I eat 2 p.m. to midnight, sedentary job. Yeah, I mean, I think that can work, man. You know, I think that I prefer having it split up a little bit more than that. I would prefer 4 or even 5 meals. But listen, at the end of the day, I mean, if you get that food in, that's really the most important thing. And I'd be curious what your situation is. Like, are you in a deficit right now? Let me make these a little bit bigger so you guys can see them. There we go. Are you in a deficit right now? Are you in a growth phase right now? Sounds like you're eating 1,000 plus calories per meal. So is that a 3,000 calorie diet? Because if so, I imagine that's probably a growth phase. Can you build on top of that? You know, and keep in mind too, it doesn't have to be solid food. You could make another, if you're eating like 3 solid food meals, you could easily do a 4th meal that was a shake. Old school way, we used to take oats and put them in the blender, and you could kind of like drink / eat your oats. But yeah, my question always from a coaching perspective isn't like, how does this work out as it is? My thought is, well, what are we going to be able to do with it in the future? I'm kind of trying to think ahead, So I look at that and I'm like, well, if we're tied to just 3 meals, it's probably going to have some limitations versus 4 meals or 5 meals. And if I can spin all the way back to the beginning, another aspect of building out your diet, if you're not using a consistent diet already, and this is something I had done. I remember at one point I was eating 4 meals, and it just, for the life of me, I just didn't want to eat another meal. I just didn't. And so what I did was I just made like a holder place meal. So I was like, I'll make this up. Let's say I ate at noon, and then 4 o'clock, and then 8 o'clock. And I wanted to squeeze another one in there. Maybe I would eat at noon and 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock. But one of those meals would be a lot smaller, like 3 ounces of meat to start, 4 ounces of meat to start. And like, the way I look at it is, even if I'm not hungry, I can eat 4 ounces of meat. It's literally like 5 bites. Chew, 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 take a drink, swallow. Do it again a few times, you're done. And ultimately, I would then trick myself. Just like eating breakfast. There's been times that I didn't want to eat a meal 1. So I would start out by just cracking 2 eggs. Be like, okay, it's not perfect, right? But I'm just going to crack 2 eggs in the pan and eat those. What is that? 10 grams of protein. It's not really a meal, right? But you're creating a holding place for where there will be a meal eventually as you build it out and get used to it. I would encourage you to try to put another meal in there. But don't think that it has to be absolutely perfect all at once. Don't think that it has to be a solid food meal either, Maybe spread it out a little bit more though. All right, we got some more super chats. Man, you guys are freaking awesome with the super chats. I really appreciate you. I didn't expect that either. So thank you very much. All right, where do we go from here? Lumberjacked. Thank you very much. I appreciate you, man. And then from there, Grant. What does Grant say? He's got a question for us. I'm 32 and I started my bodybuilding journey late. Didn't plan on going pro, although that would be awesome. Yeah, of course, man. Everybody would love to go pro, right? Should I approach it differently than a 20-year-old? Any advice? Dude, that's a good question. So I'm going to say this. I mean, I'm not a shining example of what a guy who gets a late start can do. I mean, I became a state level competitor. Did you guys see that picture I put up in the thing today? I don't know if I've shown this picture before. This was me in 2013. Let's see if I can pull that up. There we go. Yeah, look at that. It was me 2013. That was so that's 2013. That would have been probably about 8 years into training real hard and consistently. You know, I was light heavyweight there. I got 4th place. I believe that was Central States. Or maybe it was a different show. I can't remember the name of the show now, to be honest. But I mean, I'm an example of somebody who I found bodybuilding as a kid because my parents lifted weights. They exercised regularly, and their friends were into lifting heavy. They were meatheads, and one of the guys was into competing. Wanted to get my mom to compete. She had a great back, I guess, but she never did it. But I was raised around it and learned how to lift from the time I was 12. And I did that up until the time I was 15, 16, and then I preferred to like hang out with my friends and get in trouble instead. And then early college, I spent a couple years lifting again, but I'd make progress and then lose it. And it wasn't until I was about 30, maybe it was even 32, that I was like, you know what? I wonder what I could have done with this. And if I'm ever going to do it, now's the time, like if I don't do this now, I probably will never be able to do it. So I'm going to get into this again. And this time I'm going to stick to it no matter what. Like no matter what, I'm going to stick to this, And so that's what I did. And then I was able to compete as a state level bodybuilder. And I had a freaking blast. And my contest preps were so important to me. And I learned so much about life, really. It was an awesome experience. I couldn't have asked for a better experience. But yeah, so I'd say that I'm an example of somebody who got, a decently late start. And I think I did what I could with the time that I had, and maybe with my genetics too. So yeah, question being, how would you approach it differently than a 20-year-old? Gosh. So I'll say this. If you were a 20-year-old and you came to me, I might be a little less, I might be a little shy to put you on a bunch of gear, I feel like, and I've worked with plenty of guys that are 16, 17, 18 years old. And my advice to them is always like, you're going to do what you're going to do, but I want you to know that door will always be there for you. And if you build like the best natural physique you can now, that when you hit 20, you're going to be in a much better place to, if you then start cycling on and off, I want them to put it off. I don't want a 16-year-old kid. I don't want to be responsible for pushing a 16-year-old kid into doing anything like that, or anybody. I never want to push anybody, but you get what I mean. So I might be a little 20-year-old. I might not suggest gear as fast as I would to a 30-year-old guy in his 30s. It's like, well, your test levels are probably already on their way out, or could be. Let's at least look at that. You do have less time. So do you have 5 to 7 years to train naturally? Yeah, maybe not. I'd still want to get everything you can out of learning about diet and training. And here's the thing about training that's tricky. Like the diet stuff, I'd say you can learn your own body dieting wise within a couple years. Like you can get a solid idea of what it takes to diet you in all directions, right? With training, it's always evolving. So you can never know everything about training, because once you figure out what's working for you and you've exploited that for a given period of time, now you got to do something else. So yeah, it's training is something that you're always going to get better at and more nuanced at. And with those nuances, your gains will be better. So yeah, if you could train without being geared up earlier on, I think that would be to your advantage for sure. But I would still be faster to put my foot on the pedal with the gear for a 30 something year old guy than I would be for a guy that was, 17 or 20. Um, and then also too, what have you done with your life before that? Those are things to consider. Are you were you obese? Were you unhealthy? Were you drinking for the last 15 years? Because here's the thing. Yes, you know, gear can cause health issues, right? And it's more likely to cause health issues if you're predisposed to it. So, if you've already like taxed your liver a bunch and maybe you have like a little bit of fatty liver going on, then, non-alcoholic fatty liver, then I might not want to say like, oh, let's hit the orals really hard. I mean, I work with some guys, there might even be one watching now that like I've really, really watched how many orals we use because he has shown signs of non-alcoholic fatty liver. And it just makes sense that like, hey, if we can avoid stressing your liver, let's freaking do that, and we still will toward the end of a contest prep, but it's not the first thing I would go to by any means. I'm trying to think, what else would I do? What else would I do differently for a 30-year-old? You know what? I guess too, no, I can't say that. It's not true. Outside of that, man, it's just doing what you can, understanding that, yeah, in your 30s, you're probably, you're not on your way up anymore, But I'll be honest though, I feel like all of my 30s, there was no real decline. You know how people talk like, oh, you get to your 30s and it's all downhill. Oh no. I would say like 45 is where I really started to see the downhill effect start to take hold. And I'm sure that part of that is going to be genetic, but I'd say your 30s, you can really make a ton of progress. What I would warn you of though is like, you're going to have to draw a line somewhere, and be realistic, like I mentioned, I was happy as a state level guy. And maybe had I started earlier and stuck with it for longer, could I have taken it further? Absolutely. Would it be smart for me to continue doing that going on 50? Probably not. So just understand, like keep perspective, I think is probably important. And maybe I'm better off, man, if I had been hardcore bodybuilding when I was 17 and 20, 22, 25, it took me a long time to kind of learn how to like respect my body's limitations, I guess you might say. I was hard on myself for a long time. So those would be my main thoughts. All right, what else do we have here? We've got another super chat from Lumberjacked, and he says, daily Winstrol dose times a day for fat loss. Okay. So here's my thought for you, man. Number one, Winstrol is not going to help you lose fat. I want to make sure that you're aware of that. Winstrol is going to help you to retain, if not build muscle, especially while cutting. It's a great compound. It gives you that really hard, dry, nasty look. Doing an episode of Muscle Minds with Scott Stevenson, I learned that Winstrol is also like a super strong anabolic for growing muscle, believe it or not. I haven't really seen that in the real world. A few of my clients in the off season, we had maybe added in some Winstrol at the end of their cycles. We didn't see like a major difference between that or other compounds, but supposedly, you can grow some good muscle with Winstrol too. But what Winstrol does not do is it doesn't help you burn fat. It just makes you look better when you're lean. So Winstrol, here's what I would suggest would be because here's the thing too, with Winstrol, it's an oral compound, so it is going to be more stressful on your body, right? It's going to do a number on your HDL. It's also going to do a number on your liver. So I usually try to not stay on it that long. In fact, once we get on an oral, I kind of get this feeling like we're on the clock from the time that we start that oral. Because here's the thing, ultimately, to get into the best shape you possibly can, it's just a matter of time, you know? Depending on how fast you're doing it, you might get there sooner, but you've got more time. Unless you have a contest date that you need to be on stage by, you've got more time. So don't try to rush that process. Just kind of just keep taking it as long as you can. And honestly, I wouldn't run an oral except for the last 4 or maybe 6 weeks of that phase. So how much fat loss can you really get in 4 to 6 weeks compared to, say, an 18 or a 24-week diet? There's so much more diet to be had to be able to get into the shape to make the Winstrol really show through. Now, if you're not using any other anabolics, you could stretch that out. I would say, like, okay, 8 weeks. You're running testosterone as a foundation, I'd hope. You want to be on testosterone while using Winstrol. So you've got testosterone at some level in there. And if you have no other anabolics, then maybe we run it for that last 8 weeks. And if we did that, what I found, and it was interesting, this old school guy in the boards who he wasn't like a popular poster, but I knew he competed. I'd seen some of his contest pictures and he looked good. And it was a dude who had some experience. And he said, I've run Winstrol stepping it up as I get closer to the show. And one year I tried that. I didn't use Masteron. I didn't have a DHT in the plan. So I thought, okay, yeah, I'm going to try this. So I started out Winstrol as my only DHT. I want to say I started with 30 milligrams a day, and I did that for 2 weeks. And then I went to, I believe, 40 milligrams a day for 2 weeks. So there's 4 weeks in. And then I went to 60, I believe. And I think I stayed at 60 in the final week. I may have pushed that higher. But I basically staggered it up to extend the amount of time that I planned to use it. The other thing I found is that after that 8 weeks, my joints were shot. That you hear, I've heard people say that it's a myth. Winstrol doesn't dry your joints out. And maybe it was that my estrogen was crashed, but I'll tell you what, it's Winstrol. Every time I've taken it longer term, my joints would get freaking painful. So I'd watch out for that. But yeah, man, I would suggest pull it back and think about the Winstrol being that it's the icing on the cake. It's that last bit when you're already in shape, you add that Winstrol in, and then from there you get that it's a very specific look, I think, that Winstrol provides. The dry, hard, grainy. It's a very specific feel that you get from Winstrol too, like the pump that you get from Winstrol. It's like concrete. That muscle just gets so freaking hard. It's like the muscle doesn't get bigger and swollen up when you get pumped. It just gets freaking harder and harder. And if you're in shape, it looks pretty freaking cool, to be honest with you. So I think it's a great compound overall. Do you want to take it all at once? Do you want to split it up? Listen, when I first started, people were all about splitting things up, keeping blood levels even through the day. Nowadays, people are like, I want to get the pre-workout effect. I'd tell you, man, if you wanted to try it pre-workout and see if you get some sort of a benefit from that, take it an hour and a half before training. Does that provide you any more benefit? If so, you're welcome to do that. Eventually, though, that's going to build up and your blood level is going to be, high. And no matter what time of day you take it, 3 weeks down the road, it's in your system. So I don't really believe that you need to have specific timing with it for training, but I generally do want to try to reduce the load all at once. I just find I'd rather stagger that load on my body. And then spread the hormone out too. If it has like an 8-hour half-life, somewhere in there, 8 or 12, I can't remember. I'm going to split up into two doses, morning. And then if you train at night, morning and pre-workout, something like that, or pre-workout in the morning and then, later in the evening, something like that would be the way I would split it up. But definitely have testosterone in there as a base. What's up, Mark? I appreciate you, brother. And the lolly, holy shit. Did I just get a 99.99 super chat? Bill, guys, this is too much, man. No, don't do the Bill. What do you write here? Consider this from all of us. We appreciate the time that you put in to bring us the content. I found and fell in love with bodybuilding because of you. I'm sure many people feel the same way. Yeah, I can't even read that anymore. Thank you, Bill. Bill's a client of mine. We've worked together for a while now. He is a fucking madman in the gym too. In fact, Bill, I think you've sent me some training recently, haven't you? Would you be opposed to me playing any of your training? I'd love to share it with the audience here. And man, I thank you very much. I appreciate you. And guys, I appreciate being able to do this. I'm not going to turn this into a big old circle jerk, but I'll just say this is fun. This is my purpose, honestly, is, trying to just help people. Sometimes it's helping people by hanging out and just talking crap here. Sometimes there's listeners that, and believe me, I've talked to a number of listeners that have been in hard places, and we've all been there, right? And sometimes a podcast gives you that sense of community that you need on a rough day. I'm glad we can be there for that guy. And, we've got pro bodybuilders at the other end of the spectrum that are listening to our stuff. And then they might DM me asking about a particular compound. And I'm like, oh my God, that's crazy to think that you wanted to know what I thought about Masteron, So yeah, it's a lot of fun. It goes both ways, Bill. That's what I guess my point is. Thank you very much, man. All right. Let me see what else we've got here. How do you pronounce Kuba's last name? Chelin. Kuba Chelin. It's Polish, believe it or not. So I know he has that super deep northern UK accent, but he's from Poland originally, believe it or not. That's where Kuba's from. Oh, we got another super chat from Mark. Thank you very much. What do we got here? All right. He says, if you had to go to 3 days a week training, how would you set your program? I messed up the first super chat. LOL. Oh, well, thank you very much, man. I appreciate you, Mark. All right. So 3 days a week training. Let me see here too. I'm going to spy on you a little bit. I see your physique here in your profile picture. You know what, man? If you had to go to 3 times a week training, there's a lot of ways you could do it. Part of what I would want to know is how do you train now? I'll tell you what, message me back here and let me know what's your training look like right now? What does the split look like currently? And I'll respond to that. And while you do that, I'm going to see what else has come up. I'll answer one other question and then I'll respond back to you, Mark. All right. Hey, Scott. Love the show and love all the hard work that you put in day to day. Shot you an email for training a week or two ago and can't wait to hear back. You know what? Would you please do me a favor and message me again? I must have missed it. Because at this point, everybody that has messaged me, I have responded to. So I must have missed it. Thank you. And I'm waiting for Mark to message back here. And what else do we have here? Hi, Scott. I'm on Tren, test, and EQ. Do you recommend a few days a week to do lightweight training on an empty stomach to lean out? No. I would strongly encourage you to look at your resistance training as being solely the trigger for growth. Okay. Like when you're in the gym, Like, and listen, the muscle doesn't want to grow bigger. That's not what it's not like we lift weights and the muscle says, oh, okay, yeah, I want to get bigger now. No, the muscle just wants to, it wants to adapt to that stimulus. And one of the ways it can adapt is by growing bigger. And that's where the key is. Like, the human body, when I first started bodybuilding in a serious way, I felt like, okay, the cool thing is about bodybuilding that we can manipulate and force the body to do what we want. I couldn't have been more wrong. We want to coax the body. We want to put the body in an environment where it wants to do the things that we want it to do. So, you put it into that super high protein rich environment. You give it the stimulus to growth, and then you rest. You make it happy, low stress. And then you say, hey, here's plenty of protein if you wanted to get bigger, and the body is going to do that on its own. That's what we want it to do. Look at your training as being that trigger for growth. And then anything you need to do to evoke better fat loss, number one is going to be the nutrition. You got to look there first. And then number two would be cardio. And then beyond that, third would be PEDs, like fat burners. And by the way, the guy who asked about Winstrol for fat loss, PEDs for fat loss would be more along the lines of your fat burners, Clen, possibly supporting thyroid through, a replacement dose of T3, ECA stack, those types of things. Like, if you're looking for what are the compounds, or even L-carnitine, I think can be a great benefit. All right, so right now, Mark wants to go down to a 3-day training split. All right, he's doing a Meadows program. Let's see. He got sick for a while and then had some bad life things come up that makes it hard for him to get to the gym as much as he wanted at the moment. So here would be my thought to you then, Mark. If you're doing a 5 days Meadow plan, and my guess is that you probably generally like to push pretty hard. John Meadows plans usually have a decent amount of volume to them. I wouldn't call it a high volume training program by any means, especially if you really look at the way his plans are built. The way his plans are built, you may have like 4 sets of a particular exercise, but it's really that last set, that's the hard one. Gosh, there's a lot of ways to do it. You could even look at like an upper lower split, something like that could be good. That would give you the opportunity, and it depends on where you're at, man. Because I'll tell you what, some people like an upper lower split. Some people might prefer to just do a push, pull, legs. Benefit of an upper lower split is you would have higher frequency. You would basically train upper, lower, upper. Then the next week you would pick up where you left off. So it would be lower, upper, lower. I would have basically 2 different leg days set up. And then I would have 2 different upper days set up. One that would probably prioritize more back. One that would prioritize more back and biceps with a little bit of chest. And then the other one would be more chest, shoulders, and tries with a little bit of back. Something like that. That would be along the lines of, I like that idea. Every time that you can train a muscle and recover from that bout, you are going to be able to grow, right? And one of the benefits of higher frequency is that if, let's say you train one body part, every body part one time per week, well, you may only get 2-3 days of growth out of that. And then the rest of it is maybe just recovering from all the volume you did. But you every time we train a body part, that body part becomes more anabolic, and there's growth factors rushing to it, and protein is upregulated going to that particular muscle group. Yeah, that may last 48 hours. I don't know. It's going to be different in everybody. If you take a guy like Brandon Curry that Scott and I interviewed for an episode of Muscle Minds, that was one of the best Muscle Minds ever. We talked to him all about his training, and he could train like that and probably continue to get a good growth stimulus for the entire freaking week until he trained legs again, you know? Whereas guys with average genetics might get a 24, 48 hours of benefit out of a workout. And then the rest is just recovering from, you know, the hole that you dug yourself into with extra volume that maybe wasn't needed. So yeah, I could see an upper lower split being perfect. And like I said, I'd have one upper day that was more back focused, and one that was a little bit more chest focused. And then 2 different leg days, one that was maybe more hamstring focused, hams and glutes, one that was more quad focused. Now, that said, I mean, if you're doing a compound leg movement, I don't care where you put your feet on the plate, like you're still hitting quads, you know, you're still hitting hams, but you can try to shift that priority a little bit. And then just remember too, that you are training legs more frequently. So you don't need, you know, 16, 20 sets per workout. It's almost like look at it as a half a workout almost, you know, try to start with, and that might benefit you too, given where you're at right now, not having a lot of time, and you were sick. So maybe not a lot of energy. Yeah, maybe start low, set your expectations low, and then build it upward as you go and see what your body can handle. I think that could be a great plan for you. And honestly, there's no reason you can't continue to grow on that too. So yeah, man, I think that could be good. All right. What else do we have here? Let me check super chats one more time. Make sure I didn't miss anything. All right. Let's see. Dr. Marv is with us. What's one thing that you think used to matter a lot and now no longer does, or vice versa? So, all right, before I wrote diets for people, I used to be careful how I word this. I used to help people just with PED plans. And I did that from about 2009 through, it was probably about 4 years. I started diet coaching in there at some point, but I used to put together the craziest PED plans, just based off of half-lives and timing, and you know, it was honestly, and it was a lot more expensive and more gear than I would suggest now. Honestly, I would say that the key that I've learned to anabolics is figuring out the compounds that work well for you. It's boring, you know, but they all do the same thing. Some of them are going to work for you without having a bunch of negative side effects, and other ones are going to have a lot more negative side effects. You find the ones that don't have the side effects for you, the things you can tolerate, and then you just lean into those things, and it's that simple, you know. Maybe you like test and EQ, and you just did it on your last cycle. Guess what? You could probably do it again and do really well with it. You know, it doesn't have to be different. You don't have to have test prop in here at this time to make up for the fact that the test E isn't built up and the EQ isn't built up, so we have to have this. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of fun, but it's not necessary. I'd say that that's one big thing. Also, another thing is that you can be a little bit more flexible on the diet than I was able to give it credit for back when I first got consistent. Like, you told me that it was going to be, you know, and I wasn't working with a coach, but say like I'm eating 6 ounces of chicken and, you know, 200 grams of rice. It had to be 6 ounces of chicken. It couldn't be something else. It couldn't be another carb. Like it had to be exactly as I had personally written it for myself. And I found out that, you know what, you can be a lot looser with that. And I think a lot of people get that nowadays. So yeah, those are just 2 things that came up quick off the top of my head. I do 200 milligrams a week of ACE. Maybe I should drop it down to 140. Oh, is this a ongoing conversation he's having? Oh, he's using Tren. Says, if I were to take my Tren in the AM, would it still bother my sleep? Okay, yeah. So he's on 200 milligrams of Tren. and it's negatively impacting his sleep. Yeah, man. I would definitely try backing it down then and see, what the deal is. In fact, you know, I mean, could you stop the Tren for a minute? Let your sleep get back to normal and then start it at a super low dose? I don't know if you're not competing, Dave, you know? What if you were to just say pull it out altogether just for a minute? Let your sleep get back to normal, assuming that the Tren is responsible for the sleep. Sometimes it's the diet. Being on a really low calorie diet will have a negative impact on your sleep. Between that and the stress of getting super lean, but if you're not on a contest prep, I'd say try it, man. I'd say try just taking it out for a minute, getting a few nights of really good sleep, and then start it back up at a lower dose. Maybe start it at, I'd say, honestly, 25 every other day just to start. Give it a week or two. See, like, okay, how does this feel? And if that works out okay, then maybe bump that up a little bit, But yeah, probably less, I would guess, would probably be the answer to that. What else do we have here? 500 micrograms of SLU and 50 milligrams of BAM 15. Any thoughts? Tried nearly every other fat burner, but I have been thinking about trying this combo. Thanks, my bro in recovery. So I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't know what the pricing looks like for BAM 15 now. I remember when it first came out, it was really expensive. I just wasn't interested. I looked at that and I was like, gosh. With all the other tools we have to get in shape, I never needed to spend the money on this before in order to get there. So why would I want to start spending that money now? And I never looked at it any further than that. SLU is a weird one. I have had some tremendous experience with SLU personally. Like I'm talking game-changing, 180-degree shift, feeling fantastic because of SLU. In part, there's a lot of factors to it, but in large part, SLU was a big player in that game. But I also was dealing with, some mitochondrial dysfunction from having had the long flu bug, which was affecting my ability to breathe even. Like my breathing had been really rough as a result. But my lungs, so I go to get my lungs checked out. Everything looks good. My heart looks good. So there's something in there. And we found that maybe there's some damage to the mitochondria of those cells, right? And they specifically in the lungs. I found with SLU, it restored my breathing. That was like the very first thing I noticed. And then I started feeling better energy, which could in part be because of the breathing, right? Like that's only going to help you if you can breathe better. I ended up getting, my cardio endurance got really good with it. And with that, I used that as kind of a jumping off point to then build my own momentum and make some of literally the best fat loss progress I had made in 5 years, thanks to SLU. So for everybody out there who says, oh, SLU is complete placebo, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's fine. Keep thinking what you want. Here's the thing, though. I don't expect that everybody is going to have the experience that I've had with SLU. I wouldn't put it in the bag of fat burners personally. I would put it in a position where, hey, if you're maybe in a position where your mitochondria isn't functioning as well as optimally, maybe a guy who's in his 40s or 50s or 60s, or a girl, that maybe you're going to get more benefit out of it than some kid who's 20 and fresh out of the box. If you're fresh out the package still, you're probably not going to need any kind of mitochondrial enhancement. Me, on the other hand, I found huge benefit from it, but I still wouldn't put it in that fat burning pile. Number one, I already mentioned before, was diet for fat loss. And once we really get that diet moving, then we can add cardio to that. And there are so many different cool things we can do with cardio. How many of you guys saw that episode of Blood, Sweat, and Gear the weekend of the Arnold? So it was like 3 weeks ago now. We talked about cardio for like 45 minutes, different types of cardio. And I loved that conversation. Like, that was entertaining to me. And yeah, cardio though. Cardio is an awesome tool. And depending on the kind of cardio you do, you may hack your metabolism. You know, you can change the way your body burns energy. It takes energy to recover from that bout of cardio. If you go harder, if you're doing a higher intensity session, it takes more energy after you're done to then recover from that session, and you're burning more oxygen, burning more calories, just to get back to your normal baseline state. So I try to exploit diet first and then cardio. And then when everything's moving along and we're seeing the progress that we want, then if we sprinkle a little clen on top of that, then, it's going to help us to take that diet that was already working, and it's just going to push it further in the direction we want. So just, and I know you weren't asking for this advice, but I'm going to share it with you, is get that diet working, demonstrate fat loss on it, before you add the fat burner in. And you'll extend the life of that fat burner. Number one, you'll be able to get a strong benefit out of less too, and you'll save money and save your heart too from beating so hard. You don't need to ramp it up as high. Yeah, that would be my thought. And sorry, I don't have any insight on BAM 15. So where would I put SLU? I mean, I could see it in a contest prep situation, or we'll just say in a diet situation. I mean, I could see it in a couple places. I could see it in a pre-diet phase, even getting yourself geared up, keyed up to get into a good fat loss state. Maybe we start it at the beginning of the diet and run it for that first 6 to 8 weeks. I could see that. I could also see kicking it in later in the diet too. I could see really either of those places being beneficial. And I'm not going to say I have the insight as to which is better. It's such a new compound. Anybody who's using it right now, nobody's an expert. We're all experimenting with it. So my experience has been, personally, it's been fantastic for me. For others, I've seen a few people have close to the same response as me, where it's like a real game changer. And then I've seen a lot of people that have noticed their endurance is better. Like, yeah, I can just keep pushing, or my cardio, I keep going, and I'm able to go on, like 3 levels higher on the treadmill, without getting out of breath. I've seen that, and I've seen enhanced like cognitive function. People feel sharper. That was another thing I noticed out the gate. But then I've also seen where a few people have told me, like, I didn't get anything out of it, and I'm confident in where they got it from. They didn't get anything out of it. Speaking of which, if you guys are interested in checking out anything that Think Big has to offer, go over to thinkbigbodybuilding.com. We have a whole list of our sponsors, like True Nutrition, who has great protein powders, Supplement Source, and of course, a bunch of other stuff too, just exclusive offers at thinkbigbodybuilding.com. Just have to scroll down and you'll see all the links there. Speaking of which, one thing I want to share with you, we'll get back to questions. So, gosh, man, protein powder is getting so expensive, right? And I was at the True Nutrition site a couple purchases ago. I always get their Pure Whey ISO. And I thought to myself, man, it's $25, right? Or $23, $22 per pound. They sell it by the pound if you haven't bought from them before. And then you pick which flavor you want, and they mix it for you. They actually mix it before they put the flavor in too. So you get an actual pound of protein. I don't mean this as a sales pitch, but I know it sounds like that. I can't help it. Anyway, I saw they had whey concentrate, and I'm like, I've always stayed away from concentrate. But I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to give it a try. $16 a pound for the whey concentrate. So I bought a pound of it, and honestly, like, I put off using that bag because I was like, this isn't going to digest as well. I'm going to be honest with you. It's like 29 grams of protein. It has a little bit more carbs. There's like 2 grams of carbs per serving. I didn't notice anything different on my digestion. I noticed nothing different. So $16 a pound versus 22. I was like, all right, yeah, all right, I should buy some. So I finally, this week, I just bought a bag. I bought 5 pounds of it. And I signed up for it, the reoccurring. If you get it reoccurring, you get an additional 5% off or something. So I signed up for the reoccurring payments, 5 pounds. And then also, of course, I used code THINK, which gets you 10% off. So it ended up being like $13, $14 a pound for whey concentrate, which from what I understand is a very viable protein source. Not quite as refined as ISO, but I'll tell you what, my guts couldn't tell a difference. So I'm happy with it. All right, let's see what else we have here. With Primo and Mass being on shortage, do you think low dose Tren at 60 to 100 per week with moderate test and EQ would be a good off-season builder? I can't run nandrolone being on finasteride. All right. So moderate test and EQ with a low dose Tren. Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. I'll tell you what. Here's a thought for you. You're going to get a lot more. So when we talk about a strong compound like Tren, part of it is that we're also thinking about using that compound at a standard dose, And I know everybody's running everything at all sorts of crazy low doses nowadays, but I would consider a standard dose of Tren to be at least 150 milligrams per week, if not 200 milligrams per week. 200 milligrams is generally what I've used with contest prep clients. So if you were to run Tren at 60, yeah, I think you'd get something out of that. You'd get a lot more out of Tren at 60 than you would out of Mast at 60 or Primo at 60. That's for sure. It's such a strong compound, that, yeah, you're going to, I ran it at 25 per week one time. 25 per shot. I think I was doing 100 per week, and I definitely got benefits out of that. But, my problem is I'm like, man, if I'm doing good at 100, why don't I increase this a little bit? I'm sleeping fine. I should be able to handle more. You guys have to excuse me. I have to use my nasal spray here. My nose gets stuffy, especially in the spring. All right. What else do we have here? All right, we got a type 1 diabetic with us. What's up, Nick? Good to have you here, Nick Miller. He says, as I do a cut and the calories start to cut back, I go hypo during my workout and I have to eat carbs to bring my blood sugar back up. Any tips to stay on target? All right, I would want to know. It sounds like you need maybe a little bit. I don't know how many carbs you're eating right now. Are you on a pretty low carb diet? I'll tell you what, if you're getting, let's say you're getting some carbs in that pre-workout meal, but it's just not enough to hold you. The key is oftentimes in a situation like that, I've fixed that by slowing the digestion down just a little bit by using either a fat, or if we don't have room for a little bit of fat, and I don't think you need a lot, but even like 8 grams of fat, like, a couple ounces of avocado, that's also going to have fiber in it, which that's my other direction. Dietary fiber will also slow digestion down. Sometimes that would be my first intuition with you, Nick, is if you're already getting some level of carbs pre-workout and post-workout, and you're finding you're going a little, just slightly hypo during your workout, I would start out by adding a fat source. And for starters, I might go a little bit higher. Obviously this is not going to be beneficial for fat loss, but 15 grams of fat, and then see, does that work? Let's get like 2 workouts in where that works for you. And then if that works for you, I'd say, okay, well, let's try pulling that fat back by half. Let's go to 8 grams of fat. Let's see, is that enough to keep you from going hypo? And then still test your blood sugar. If you don't have a continuous glucose monitor, test your blood sugar post-workout and see, Okay, how close was I to going hypo from there? Um, let's see. Currently, the same guy I think here. Currently 40 on TRT at 200 milligrams a week of TRT. Last Deca says that I'm 9.1% body fat, even though I think I'm closer to 12. I hear you, man. All right, so sounds like you're getting pretty lean though, and that ends up becoming more tricky. You know, you always could, depending on what your food looks like, you could always stack more carbs pre-workout. You know, move them from another place in the diet if you had that kind of room. But I would start with the fats first, just to stabilize things, slow it down a little bit. Fats or dietary fiber. The nice thing about the fiber is it's not going to add extra calories to your diet if that were to work for you. But man, nobody likes going hypo during their workout, right? It's the freaking worst. Literally, like the first thing I've noticed when I start going hypo while training is that my strength just drops. And then my ability to contract the muscles, just like I can't do it anymore, you know? And the next thing you know, I'm getting this like cold sweat. And the next thing you know, I'm getting this like kind of like foggy feeling in my brain. And then from there, I have to eat a donut or something. All right. What else do we have here? You guys are awesome, by the way. Holy crap. I can't believe we have about 200 people watching this right now. You guys are freaking cool. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you guys. And comment. Tell me what's going on. I want to hear from you guys, each and every one of you. We should have 200 comments right now. And also, if you haven't hit the like button, it really does make a difference. So please, if you're watching right now, hit the like button. I don't think you can hype this, but the like button would really help me out a lot, and I appreciate it. Let's see here. What else do we have? We got people talking back and forth, which is good. 150 milligrams of Test E split 3 times a week for TRT. That plus 15 puts me at 1500 with 42 for free test. My heart rate goes up to 60 to 85 when sleeping, and I wake up often. I feel like I've had restless sleep. Brian, he also adds, my blood tests now show I have low DHEA, pregnenolone, and high progesterone. Is there a supplement I should take? I'm working out 5 days a week. So I wouldn't worry. So I know that pregnenolone it's become pregnenolone DHEA. It's become a super hot trend to supplement with them on your TRT. You're welcome to. Just because you take pregnenolone doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to convert into the things we want it to. I would look at your sleep situation though. I mean, going to 85 isn't crazy talk, but I just wonder, like, are you getting, but you don't feel like you're getting a restful sleep. I just wonder, are you at all possibly, oh, and he also adds, I'm new to working out, overtraining. I mean, dude, you could look into that for sure. You could look into that by taking a deload. That's possible. I just wonder too, if you have good insurance, maybe get a sleep study. Wouldn't hurt to see if you have any kind of apnea going on. Although, like I said, 60 to 85, it's not a major jump, but you're not feeling rested. You're getting the vibe that your sleep is off and you're not feeling rested. Those things that it strikes me, have you put on a good amount of weight so far? Are you building? Maybe you went on this test and now you're up 15 pounds. That's a lot more weight. Yeah. What else do we have here? Another super chat from Gorilla Stunter. What do we have here? If you wanted to build a bigger chest with a push-pull legs routine, how would you create the split for it? Okay, I like that. By the way, it's Dwayne. I wondered when it said Stunter if this is somebody that Nags knew. All right. So let me take another drink of water here. and this is a fun one. I think it's, I'll tell you what I figured out. So I was training chest one time a week with everything else, right? And all the while, and I'm doing these John Meadows plans. And all the while, I started recording Muscle Minds. And I don't know if you guys knew this, but the original first year of Muscle Minds was me, Jordan Peters, and Scott Stevenson. Scott came on later, and yeah, Jordan was real new at the time. Like, I remember at that point, nobody knew who he was. In fact, we all met up at the Arnold Classic to watch Luke Sando, who also nobody knew at the time. We all we were sitting in prejudging. I remember, like, nobody walked up to Jordan. Nobody knew him. You know, we were talking afterwards, and there were people that were like friends with Luke, and the Iron Rebel crew were there. But like, there weren't like a bunch of, like, later, you guys know what it's like if Jordan's somewhere, like, everybody shows up to talk to Jordan. But yeah, anyway, I'm listening to them talk about progressive overload, and I'm doing this, I'm one time a week training. So down the road, my shoulders started hurting, and I thought to myself, well, these guys are really into the progressive thing and higher frequency. So I started doing 2 of my chest exercises on my chest day, and then 2 of my chest exercises later in the week on my shoulder day. And I also contest prep for like that entire year. Longest diet I had ever done, February through November. And I competed several times throughout that season. And I came out the other side of that with my chest having been bigger than it ever had been. And it was just simply from having that higher frequency, because I didn't change the number of sets I did. I mean, I will say this. With higher frequency like that, you do have the opportunity to, you know, like when you get in the gym, that first 1 or 2 exercises is your best. And then if you're doing like 4 or 5 exercises for chest, like 3, 4, and 5, you're just trying to keep the blood in, get a pump. You're just continuing to train, right? But that first 2 exercises, that's where you're really strong. So at this point, because I split it up, I'm doing 2 one day, 2 another. Like, I was really strong every time for every set. You know, that I think made a big difference for me. Anyway, how would I set it up? I'm always going to do a major body part first, right? So I don't care if shoulders are if you need more shoulders, I want to try personally to keep the bigger body part, unless your shoulders are way, way behind and your chest is the best it could possibly be. I generally want to start with a large body part and work my way down. So chest is always going to be first. There's a few things you could try. Like, you could try pre-fatiguing and see what that does for you, you know, where but I would say, honestly, it's just getting, and it's boring, getting brutally strong. Getting brutally strong on the chest press is going to build the most muscle. That's your number one answer. And that's the number one thing that will keep producing more size. You know, if you can bench, let's say you can bench 2 1/4, and you could do that for 8, 10 reps. If that same guy can learn how to bench 315 for 8 reps, that chest is going to be a bigger chest. It's just, you know, the key is using good full range of motion. And this is something I have to credit other people who helped to teach me. Big Dave Smith, he's good friends with Scott Stevenson. He does Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He's like 200 and, I don't know, 50, 60 pounds. Yet he can do backflips. Like, the dude is incredible, right? And he's really freaking strong. And he had helped me understand the importance of that full range of motion. And here's the way I see it, is that, you know, everything from, like, if before the elbows get down, before you get down into the hole, you know, when you're here, you know, your arms are kind of parallel. Your upper arm is going to be parallel to the floor. You're able to use your tricep, you're able to use your shoulder to help stabilize that. And that's why we're a lot stronger at the top of the bench press motion. But when you get down in that hole, it's all pec. And I had to retrain myself to get absolutely strong in the hole start. And that's where guys, I think, tear their pecs too. I've seen so many people that they're doing like the top half of the bench press and they never drop it down. But then guess what? Like they end up getting a little bit too low on one rep when they're getting fatigued, and then they try to push and they don't have that assistance of their tricep and shoulder, and that's when they like pop a fiber in their pec, or worse, tear their pec. I would say back the technique off first, and if you don't have a strong chest, work on making sure that you begin, because it's a compound lift, right? Bench press, any type of a chest press movement. Make sure that you begin that compound lift with the pec, with that target muscle. You know, I feel the same way about pull downs with back. I want to get that full stretch so that the bicep isn't holding onto it. If your arm is bent, then you're using the bicep to kind of hold it and you're kind of muscling it, you know. I want to let that go, and then I want to engage with the back. The back is what's going to move that first. So in a chest press, I want my chest to be the first thing. And the only way I can do that is by getting the weight down into the hole. So, you know, lighten the weight way, way up at first, and work on, if you're not already, work on getting that full range of motion all the way from the chest all the way up, and then control that negative down nice and slow all the way to the pecs. Just focus on having the best freaking form that you possibly could, and then work at getting as strong as humanly possible on it. Honestly, I would say, you know, if you're doing 2 times a week, basically, if you're training 4 or 5 times doing a push-pull legs, I would say, gosh, 2 exercises, maybe 2 sets per exercise is all you need. Anything, and really going hard. I mean, warming up to the hardest thing you can do, and then tracking that, right? Writing it down. I even would say shoot video. I know everybody's getting tired of tripods in the gyms, right? It's not for Instagram. This is like, if you look at any good sport, they're all playing the video back, right? Like if you watch a football game, they're all going to review the tapes. There's no reason we shouldn't review the tapes too on our training. And the minute you do too, like we can instantly, because I have clients send video, and the minute that they see their own video, they're already critiquing themselves. They're like, oh gosh, I didn't go as deep on that as I thought I did. Or, you know, I didn't control that negative the way I thought I did. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you realize you're like, oh wow, I had better control in those last 2 reps than I thought I did. But yeah, I would say really analyze your technique and learn to get absolutely strong. That would be my thought, man. All right, let me see what else we have here. Hey, Scott, this is my first cycle. Please let me know what you think. 300 milligrams of Test E split 5 times per week sub-Q, and 1 milligram split 0.5 every 3.5 days. I assume you mean Arimidex. How long should I be able to run this? Okay, so are you on TRT? Because if you are, that's going to determine how long you can run it for. If you're not on TRT, the longer you're on cycle, the harder you're going to be shut down, the harder it's going to be to recover, right? So if you're not on TRT, my thought would be to probably go no longer than 12 weeks, honestly, just so that you can get back off, recover. And the sooner you recover, the sooner you can get back on again on your next cycle. If you're running TRT, you could run that longer term. Like that wouldn't be a problem. 16 weeks. It's a low dose cycle. 16 weeks, 20 weeks. As long as you're still making progress, be honest with yourself. Are you still just as motivated, or do you get to a point where you're coasting? You know, if you're not hungry for it, then just pull back, because the sooner you pull back, the sooner you'll reinvigorate yourself, and the sooner you'll be back to wanting to push hard again. So I'd say beyond 16 weeks, it's pretty freaking tough to stay motivated for a lot of people. So I'd say that's probably a good window. But, you know, if you do run it longer term, you know, what I would say, let's say you're at 12 weeks and you're thinking you're going to go another 8, maybe get some more lab work done. Look to see, you know, where is your CBC and CMP, just to see the basic stuff. You know, you could probably even check your lipids too while you're at it, but make sure like your hematocrit's not getting too high, things like that. And yeah, that'd be my thought. How about this? I ran SLU up to 100 milligrams in a pretty drastic deficit and felt pretty amazing the entire time with a little Mott C and methylene blue. Dang, 100, unless it's a typo. I assume he means that, though, 100 milligrams. It's interesting. I was talking to a medical doctor who's also a researcher, and he was saying that, you know, what did he say? He was like, you know, the whole like translating from rats to people thing isn't always true, because there were like psychedelics in the 60s that were dosed in micrograms with rats, and humans never needed any more than micrograms of that stuff either. I'll tell you what, I'm kind of hesitant to push this stuff too high, just because we still don't know what the potential sides could be. You know, I'm a huge proponent personally for myself of SLU, but I'm also, you know, I've got my other, I'm also very well aware. But for me, I feel like it's really boosting my quality of life overall. So I definitely still see it as a win. Hopefully that doesn't mean that I'm going to be in for any kind of issues in another, you know, 5, 10, 20 years. What's going on, Tim? Good to see you, man. Mitochondrial and copular, similar to DMP. That was the BAM15. Yeah, I also don't use DNP either. I did use it twice. I've never used it with a client. Not saying that I wouldn't, just that I never felt like we haven't needed it. Can't sleep on Clenbuterol. Well, then definitely don't use it, Joe. How about this one? For the past 2 to 3 weeks, my joint pain has gone from tolerable to damn near unbearable. How would you structure a deload week? Take it lighter, take a week off altogether. All right. Dang. Also, Joe V says that he's down 160 pounds. Wait. Yeah, that's incredible. All right. Anyway, I wonder what's causing the joint pain, man. You know, is there something you're doing in your training that's causing this joint pain? I know that years ago, I used to load up the leg press with like every plate I could find. And then I would, you know, bring the leg press down and then drive it back up and lock out, right? And then my legs are shaking and locking out, and then bring it back down. And that put a lot of freaking pressure on my knees. My knees would get tweaked. And then I'd be like, well, I just got to wrap my knees now and keep leg pressing like that. I learned though that instead of that hard lockout, I do kind of like a soft stop at the top, and I keep the tension in the target muscle. By the way, too, back to that topic on chest training, I don't do like a hard lockout at the top. Especially if I'm trying to grow a chest, you know, I'm not going to stack the joints like that. I would rather keep the tension in the pec and then lower that weight back down. Same thing here. I don't know which joints he's talking about. If it's all of them, is it just your elbows, your shoulders? If it's all of your joints, then I would wonder, like, what's going on with your estrogen levels? Did you crash your estrogen, buddy? You know, that's possible. That could be a thing. If all your joints out of the blue, your ankles feel creaky, your knees are hurting when you squat, elbows are hurting when you curl, I would look at this being more a systemic thing, possibly due to low estrogen is super common. If it is, say, this particular shoulder's bothering me and this knee is bothering me, then maybe you are beat up. Maybe you do need a deload. Maybe you just need to rethink, though, how you're training. But yeah, if you do take a deload, let's talk deloads for a minute. How do you run a deload? I think you could take a week off. If you really needed a deload, taking an entire week off from the gym, it would not be the end of the world. Like that, if you're beat up like this, that's probably only going to help you. Another route to go, like a common way to deload would be, let's not load the central nervous system the same way. Because every time we go to hard failure, we're beating the crap out of our central nervous systems, right? So I would suggest not going to failure And just simple as that. You could do the same exercises if you wanted to. It would also be a good time to experiment with other exercises too. Is there a machine that maybe you hadn't been using because it's just not part of your program, but you like the idea of it? Or belt squat, something different, right? Go try that this week, but also don't take it to hard failure. Every time we go to hard failure, we're tapping into and here's the thing is that we only have so much recovery in our bodies. And this is the analogy I always imagine is this water bottle, and this is my recovery. And every time we go to failure, every time we do a set, we're dumping a little bit out, a little bit out, a little bit out. So eventually we're going to get to that point where we don't have any left to give, So you got to think about how many times you go to failure in a workout. I think that really is the key to optimizing your recovery, is finding that balance. But there's a lot of ways you could do a deload, from, like I said, taking the week off altogether, just pulling everything back, not going to hard failure. And then, hey, something I picked up from Dusty is when you go back into your workouts, if you're tracking your training, let's say that you backed off, right? Let's say you take the whole week off, or you just don't go to hard failure, you're using lighter weights. When you come back, he had suggested that you don't just pick up where you left off. You go back 2 weeks in the log books. And then here would be my thought with that. Let's say you were shooting for 10 reps, and let's say you got the 90s for 10, and the next week you got the 95s for 9, and then you got the 95s for 10. Let's say you go back 2 weeks in the logbook, and that's where you were at. I'd still do the 95s, and if you can get 12, then get 12. When you're back to it after the deload, and then still just step it up that one step at a time. Don't just pick back up. Maybe you can get the 105s, right? Well, let's go back to those 95s. Get as many as you can that week, and then step it up a notch the following workout and get as many as you can. Maybe you're going to get 14. That's okay. And then you increase by that small increment, the next workout, and you'll be able to prolong your progression that way too. All right. What are your thoughts on running 20 micrograms of Clen using antihistamines to clear the receptors versus increasing the dose? Gosh, man, I know the whole concept of that. In fact, they used to sell a particular antihistamine on the black market along with Clen that you could use. I don't know if you guys have ever done that before, but I would say I don't do that. Instead, I do step it up. I know a lot of guys run it differently. I think the most common way people run it is ramp up to whatever you can tolerate, 120 micrograms within a few days, and then ride that out for 2 weeks and then come off. I've also heard 3 weeks. I've also heard, 3 weeks at 8, a week at 80, a week at 100, a week at 120, and then come off. I explained already earlier in the stream here how I want to make sure that we already have you moving along at a good rate for fat loss. We've demonstrated with the nutrition plan that you're losing fat. We add cardio on top of that. We push it further. And then down the road, we add in just a sprinkle of Clen, 20 micrograms. And then you will continue to progress even faster. And what I'll do is I'll run that 20 for 2 weeks, and then I'll go to 40 for 2 weeks. And it might be longer. If we're at 40 micrograms and we're in the 3rd week, but you still came down, our target weight, I'm not going to then just, arbitrarily increase it just because it's been 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Like, we'll ride that out until we needed to make the change, because here's the way I see it is that, we have a lot of tools in our arsenal for fat loss, and I see the diet as being, one button we can press. And within the diet, there's multiple buttons by, maybe carb cycling or reducing a particular particular nutrient. We also have cardio. That's another button we can press. And within cardio, there's sub buttons. Like, are we going to do high intensity? We're going to use slow, steady state. There's different things we can modulate within that. So if And then the fat burners are another button we can press. So and I try not to just keep pressing the same button over and over again. And I want to try to leave as many tools in the bank to continue going, to be able to use in the future, because I don't want to paint us into a corner. So if you say we're shooting for 2 pounds per week and you're down 2 pounds on 40 micrograms of Clen, and then the second week you're still down 2 pounds, and then the third week after that, like, we should increase, right? Because Scott says he increases after 2 weeks. Let's take it a third week and see what we get. And if we don't demonstrate what we want, then maybe it's time to hit that Clen button again. But we do have other options too. We've got the cardio button to hit. We've got, so there's a lot of ways, and I try to rotate through those things to not just lean into the same tool over and over again. So that's what I think. Honestly, I think that's what the benefit of using PEDs is. For a natural, we have basically 2 options. We've got the diet button, we've got the cardio button, and that's it. You're hitting one of those 2 buttons every time. You can only hit those buttons for so long. So yeah, I see the fat burning buttons it will help you push further, I believe, ultimately, faster. But yeah, you want to try to still reserve those buttons as long as you can. What else do we have here? Chicken breast at $3 a pound would be equivalent to whey at 75 cents per scoop. So I think whey is already more expensive. Common price is at least $1.50 a scoop. Yeah, man. So I don't know if you guys heard on the audio podcast, we had Jim McMahon from Mutant on, and he was talking about the reasons that protein powder has gotten more expensive. And basically you can blame Starbucks. They're making a lot more protein-laced drinks. And for that reason, there's only so much whey out there, and they've bought it up. So a lot more of the market is going to Starbucks and Pepsi, companies like that, because they're using whey more than they used to. So, yeah. What else do we have here? I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom here. Speaking of pressing buttons, my wife is pressing my buttons all the time. Sadly, never the Clen button, though. Let's see. Why does barely anyone talk about like leg and arm length when training? I had a terrible time feeling my lats doing anything until I used an exercise that was better leverage for my shorter arm span. Like strength people talk about legs and squatting and deadlifts, but yeah, that's interesting, man. I guess we don't really talk about that, do we? About like the length of limbs. We might talk about it when analyzing a physique on stage, right? Like, oh, he has shorter legs, longer torso. It makes his waist look small and his legs look real thick. You have that certain body type, or that guy has shorter arms, so his biceps really peak. There is that, or a tall guy where you're like, yeah, well, he's got long limbs, so it's going to take him a lot to fill that out. That's a good question, man. I recently tried 250 test, 150 primo, but HDL was 25. Normally it's in the 30s. I swapped to bold sip, but got really dry hands, and E2 seemed to crash at 400 test, 200 bold. So I reduced to 450 test, 150 bold. What should I try from here? Dude, that's a great question. In fact, man, I'm working with a guy who was on 600 test, 300 EQ, and he literally, we blew his estrogen out of the water with that. And I was surprised. I didn't expect that. He's tended to need more estrogen control in his life. I was surprised to see him it's the first time he ran this, right? He's newer to cycling. He's been at it for a little while now. We ended up pushing the test up. We pulled the EQ out altogether, first of all, just to kind of like give him a break from that. And then we pushed the test up to 750. And now we've reintroduced the EQ back in at 150. We're going to see what we get. I would say this, man. Where would I go from here with you? I would definitely get your estrogen levels checked after about 5 weeks on that cycle. 450 test, 150 mat or EQ. I'd see where you're at with that, man. 450 test, 150 EQ. Just see what's going on. You might find that you're in a good spot estrogen wise, and if so, dude, ride that till the cows come home. I don't know why I said that. Till the cows come home. All right, so we got 163 people with us. You guys are the real G's. Thanks for hanging with me. What else do we have here? Oh, he says, what else should I try from here? For reference, and 400 test, 200 mast, 35 Tren, my HDL. So basically your consideration is your HDL. E2 was 190 on 350 test with no AI. So yeah. So you need some level of estrogen control, right? Here would be a major thought to you. So this is a between cycles thing. I would do everything I could to get my HDL up as rapidly as possible and then try to maintain that between cycles. That's ultimately going to be the key. I found that once HDL gets low on cycle, repairing it on cycle, even if you change the compounds, is tough. I found that in order to get your numbers back, it generally is going to take coming back down to either coming off or TRT, whatever you do. That would be my main thought. And, plenty of healthy fats, good omega fats, fish oil, citrus bergamot. Those are directions that I try to go into. Dante is really into citrus bergamot now, and he got me into it. My calcium score. So calcium score, I don't know if we've talked a little bit about it on the shows. Calcium score is a test that you generally have to pay out of pocket. I discovered mine was, I think it was either 100 or 120. And I one of my clients, he went in to find out how much it was going to cost by him, and they wanted like hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So just shop around because it's an out-of-pocket service. They consider it to be like non-necessary or whatever by insurance. It goes up to 100, and that's the healthy range. If you're 0 to 100, that's healthy. I was scared, right? Like I felt like, man, I'd used gear for over a decade, and I didn't have like a healthy life for 10 years before that. So I'm afraid to see where I'm at. I came out at, and I was at 10.5 basically, which is good, like real good. It's not 0. I know guys that are at a 0, lucky bastards. But 10 is considered to be really good, especially for a guy who, had abused his body and used a lot of gear. So I'm not unhappy with that, but I talked to Dante about, well, what can I do? And he had suggested it was like 2 grams of citrus bergamot and a high dose of nattokinase, as well as ubiquinol, which I'm already running. I do a high dose. I do between 200 to 400 milligrams of ubiquinol. I ran 400 for like 3 years straight, and now I backed it down some. Ubiquinol was really the first supplement that I found to be beneficial for my recovery from the long bug. So I started with 100. I was like, oh, I noticed something. I noticed improvement. So I went to 2, went to 3, went to 6. I didn't see a difference between 6 and 4, so I went back down to 4. But yeah, man, get your HDL corrected while you're off cycle, getting that into a good place. That's the best way. And then when you go on cycle, it's easier to manage. Of course, DHT compounds are going to want to level it, and orals are going to want to level it too. Is Reta better once a week or split up, half on Sunday, half on Wednesday? So here's the thing. I don't think people are talking about this anymore, but they were talking about, like, to get the true best effect, you want to be able to peak that dose up high, blah, blah, blah. I still found personally that the biggest drawback to Reta is the slow digestion, people experiencing the delayed gastric emptying to the point they get constipated. And eventually, if you're dieting hard, you're in a position where you're a little bit more likely to be constipated anyway. So that's the number one battle. And splitting that dose up, I find, helps. That if you're taking less more frequently, that you can overcome that more easily versus guys and girls that I've worked with that have dosed it all at once a week. They may tend to be more constipated around the shot, and then that starts correcting itself as they get further away from it. And that's as the drug is leaving their body too, Let's see. At 5'11", 227 pounds, how lean should I get before doing a larger cycle? I'm at 210 milligrams of test all the time for TRT, so never go off. 5'11", 227. It's hard to say, man. Are you 227 with a belly, or can you see the outline of your abs? I would say this. Let me put it this way to you, too. I think that I was just reading Angry Listener's comment. Can we have an Uncle Scott's wisdom at the end of the show? I'll try. I'll say this. So you can continue to grow muscle even in a deficit. I don't think that muscle, it's not going to stretch your t-shirts out the way it does if you're eating a ton of food. But I wouldn't necessarily worry about I got to get lean so that I can bulk. Every contest prep that I ever did, I came out better out the other side, all except for one where I intentionally over dieted just to see what would happen. But outside of that year, every time that I've contest prepped, I came out the other side just better. And as I began to eat a little bit more food and fill back out, and sometimes sometimes, man, I didn't do it right. Sometimes I just went to all the junk food, eating bagels and pizza and all that. And I'd fill back out fast. And all of a sudden I'm bigger in just better shape than I had before I started the diet. You can't. So I've seen it. Gosh, I've used this picture so many times. Can I pull this one up? Yep. I got it right here. So here's an example of somebody. This is a long time client of mine. Let me see if I can get this picture to open. I've got to download it off the cloud real quick. All right, here it is. This is Vache. And he was a natural competitor. I've shown this to you guys before. That picture on the left was the first day of his contest prep. We worked together probably 5 seasons. And when we weren't working together, he was doing whatever he wanted with the diet. He didn't do any kind of fancy reverse after the show was over. He just went back to eating whatever he wanted. That picture on the right is about 6-8 weeks after the prep. So you can see he lost his conditioning pretty quick after the show. But you can also see he's substantially bigger. Now, keep in mind, he was natural, right? He is when I say a deficit, oh my God, Vache had to diet hard. We're talking go to a keto diet at certain points. We're talking, okay, Vach, we got to pull some fats. We're talking down to protein only. We're talking a guy who was probably doing an hour of cardio a day. Yet, he still came out bigger out the other side of that. You can't, and then we've talked to people too, where you can grow muscle. It was Chris Barricat was part of a study showing that you can continue to grow muscle. They tested up to a 500 calorie deficit. I think part of it is that you are improving your insulin sensitivity through that process. And I think that some of it doesn't really show up. You're not all bloated out, stretching your shirt sleeves and growing. You're just slowly but surely accruing new tissue over time. And it's not till you really fill the muscle up. Muscle's a lot like sponge, that it can expand, it can contract. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make is that they start dieting, the muscle gets depleted from glycogen and they think that they're losing muscle. So then they're like, oh, I got to load. So then they load and they expand it back out and they're like, oh yeah, okay, I grew my muscle back. No, you just filled out the same muscle you had, and you also arrested the fat loss process too, you numbskull. So yeah, I think that I wouldn't, if you got, I guess here's my thought, man. If you've got to ask that question, how lean should you get? You could probably get leaner. You know, that would be my thought. All right, what else do we have here? Melon head. So I can't have much carbs, fat, or protein. 175 grams max due to stomach, let me move this, intestinal surgery. I need to lose weight and not muscle. Thoughts? I was 196 on stage, but 260 now and fat. Dude, Melonhead, I'm sorry to hear that, man. And I hope that post-surgery now you're doing better overall than you were, obviously, if you needed surgery. Like, I hope you're doing good, man. I'm doing only 250 sip, 5,000, was it 5,000 grams of creatine, also on Metamucil once a day for life. Dude, that's a tough one for me to answer, man, because I don't know how your body's going to respond, you know? Gosh, yeah, I'm sorry, man. I have a tough time answering this one without knowing more about you. But I'll tell you what, because you said 196 on stage, I want you guys to understand out there, 196 pounds on stage is a lot of muscle. I mean, unless he's like 6'6", which I doubt he is. You know, a guy who's, say, we'll say 5'9" or under, like, you get to 200 pounds on stage and you're lean. That's quite a feat. Like, most people in the world will never reach that level of muscularity. Figure two, a guy who's 199, 196 pounds on stage is going to be walking around at like 240, you know, filled back out with still seeing the outline of his abs. You know, that's a big dude. So I will say this, man, you knew what to do. He's 5'10", right? So he knew what to do to get into shape. You knew what to do to get in shape before. Maybe you can't do all those same things, but what applies to you today and what can you do? That would be the big thing. Here's the thing for me, man. Like, you know, I told you guys how I got sick and all of that, and I'm looking at all the things I can't do anymore and how bodybuilding isn't the same as it used to be. And I had to refigure things out. And it really came down to like just being humble and asking myself like, okay, well, what can I do? What are the things I'm capable of that will make a difference? And I bet you, man, that there's probably some little things that you're not taking advantage of that you probably could start shifting some body fat. And all you have to do is lose 2 pounds, right? Like, that's the start. And then from there, 2 pounds. So, like, what are the little things you could do? Protein and balance over carbs. I mean, yeah, for sure, man. But here's the thing. So it sounds like you have some digestional stuff. I wouldn't want to tell you to eat so much move so many of your calories to protein that you start getting constipated off of it. So that's why I was kind of afraid to start throwing at you, you know, ideas as far as what to do with the nutrition. But yeah, you know, I definitely would want to make sure that all my meals were protein at the foundation and then, you know, modulate the fats and carbs. I'll say this too. I found that most people can't get into incredible shape while using all three macros. Usually we have to get rid of either carbs or we have to get rid of fats. Excuse me. It's hard to diet on all three of them. So that would be one thought. We got, hey Scott, thanks for answering my question about traveling with Test the other week. That's right. I'm glad I came back alive and no questions. Just enjoy listening. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. And glad you made it back. he went to Paris, and he was geared up, and he took his gear with him. So we're glad you made it, man. Oh, also, I'm on a low dose Tren, 27 milligrams every other day, and don't want to push it. So hopefully, I won't talk myself into going up too fast, since I have no sides yet, and I am seeing results. Man, so that's the thing, is like, we're like, I had no sides, so why don't I take more? I can handle more. All right. Ever see the movie Magazine Dreams? No, I have not. Your thoughts on running rapid insulin pre-workout 6 days a week? Skip runs it every workout, but don't you get used to the amount of IUs ran? Let's say you ran 10 to 14 IUs rapid. Do you cycle it? It's a good question. So, I mean, honestly, I've seen people do okay with it longer term, not needing to cycle it. I would definitely want to just keep monitoring my blood sugar. But even 10 to 14 units, I keep it a lot lower than that. I'll run it super low with people, you know. We'll get to like maybe 5-6 units, and then beyond that, if we wanted to use more, like say like it's somebody who's in a growth hormone situation where maybe they're having some blood sugar issues because of a higher dose of GH, we may go to a low dose of insulin with meals, like 2 units per meal type thing, something like that. But rarely do I ever go to, in fact, I don't really go personally, at least. I don't go that high. I don't go to like double digits to, 10, 15 units. I had in the past for sure. Running Primo and Test at 1-to-1 gets me to 24 on E2 on an ultra sensitive test. What ratio would you expect test to EQ would be? Dude, that's all bets are off, man. It really is. All bets are off. I've seen, I mean, we had somebody else here who just got smashed by EQ. I'm seeing some guys getting just utterly crushed now by EQ. I don't know. Are they making the EQ different nowadays, guys? But I would say that you're at a 1-to-1 with test to Primo. I would say like maybe a 2-to-1, believe it or not, like 2-to-1 test to EQ. 400 test to 200 EQ, for instance. That might be something. Cheers from Minnesota, Scott. Just got some sussed and making changes quick. Adding in EQ this week. Check that estrogen down the road, man. I'm seeing a lot of guys just crushing it lately. Oh, you know what? I said 227, by the way, for Nathan. He was 277. So, yeah, bro. I would say that everything I said applies, man. Everything I said applies. Just keep focusing on getting leaner, brother. Unless you're like 277, like Big Rami 277, then you tell me what to do. All right, you give me some advice. But yeah, man, if you've got a good amount of body fat left to lose, just keep dieting, brother. And you know what too, if you had been holding a good amount of fat in the past, like beyond that even, you might have the genetics to store fat more easily. And if you didn't have the genetics, you might have the epigenetics from having gained that fat and lived with it for so long, For some people, it's never in the cards to do like a quote bulk. So doesn't mean you can't still grow an incredible amount of muscle, but just keep working on getting into better shape, improving that insulin sensitivity, getting leaner. Your body will just keep responding better and better as you do. So, and I'm looking at Lemonhead's question again. He said, I wanted to reread it. He said, so I can't have much carbs, fats, or protein, 175 grams max. Does he mean 175 grams of everything or 170? Yeah, he must. Man, that's tough. Brother, I would do what you can to try to lean toward mainly proteins then. And for you, you know what? You might be in a situation where you're going to have to get that cardio moving. Like if you don't have nutrition to work with, you might be able to hack that a little bit by, it's not the be all end all answer, but it might give you some benefit to have a good amount of cardio in there. I got into the rower this year, and the first time I did the rower, I never did the rower in my life ever. And then my wife wanted one, so we got one of those concept rowers off a Facebook Marketplace, and we went and picked it up, and it sat down here in the basement. She's used it. I never got on it, so this past year I was like, I'm gonna give the rower a try, and I love it now. Like, it's my favorite. And at first I was like, all right, I'll do 10 minutes, 10 minutes of the rower, and like, it was tough, and it gets your breathing up, and then I found out, like, okay, 15, I got to like a half hour. And it's not like all out half hour. It's like a little bit later for a half hour, get warmed up, and then work it up into like I listen to music usually. So I'm listening to like some music that gets me going, and then I fucking go hard with it, right? Until I can't. And then I back it back down and catch my breath. And then I go hard again. And I can tell the difference, later in the day, man, I'm freaking hungry. Like I can tell that my EPOC got driven up from that post-exercise oxygen consumption. So, all right, we got another super chat here. Let me see what we got from Tony Bologna. That's how it's spelled, guys. Tony Bologna. Ghost of our hippo character floats in front of the words "game over." Is that I gotta see here, because it doesn't show up on my screen. Oh yeah, what's up, Tony? This is the way it comes up for me. I don't know if you guys will see it the way I see it. Yeah, I don't actually see the picture. I see a description of the emoji. Thank you, Tony. I appreciate you, man. All right, let me see what else we have here. Turn this screen back down. Guys, I appreciate you hanging with me. And if you haven't hit the like button yet, do me a favor, hit the like button. It definitely helps. And I'm here to hang with you guys, just talk shop. I know I missed a bunch of stuff. Currently 40 on TRT at 200 milligrams. Last Deca says that I was 9.1% body fat, even though I think I'm closer to 12. Oh, Nick Miller, we already talked to you, didn't we? All right. You guys can see I don't do a lot of these. I'm not a pro at reading and talking at the same time. One of my clients, Bill, said, I have no idea what BAM 15 is. I'm about to get set on fire here. Yeah. I know I missed a bunch of stuff here. My local supplement shop said protein prices are going up again over the next couple months. Yeah. That's a freaking shame. What else do we have here, guys? Yeah, I know, Tony. Your picture didn't show up, man. I appreciate you, though, brother. Thank you very much. Let's cold call Dave. It's late, man. I texted him earlier today. So he was setting up for the Arnold. He had to go, or the Arnolds, as you guys in the UK call it. Don't ask me why. UK people and Canadian people call it the Arnolds. Why do you call it the Arnolds? Can you answer that question for me, please? It's the Arnold. That's the Arnold Classic. So he was telling me, though, he was setting that up, and it sounds like all was going good. What's up? We got Jake with us. Jake comments on all of our shows. I know a bunch of you guys do. Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. Hey, Scott, love your and Dave's show. Be conservative with the doses, and don't check out on us. I had a close call. Do you think 250 test and 2.5 I use a GH 4 days a week plus 25 MK677 3 days a week is good enough? My goal is recomp while trying to work on my bench and squat. 14 weeks and 20 milligrams of VAR the last 6 weeks. Would you do anything else? He's 6'3", 230 pounds at 18%. Okay, so I'm not a big fan of MK. Especially if you're trying to diet. I bought a bottle of it, all right? And I got it from Modern Aminos. And I was like, yeah, so I'm going to try, because I remembered using it before, and I remember getting like the best sleep in the world. Like I just felt so restful when I took MK. So I was like, you know what? I remember that it might make you hungry, but I don't think it really affected me. I'm just going to take some MK before bed, and I'm going to get a really good night's sleep. Plus, I'm going to possibly enhance my GH levels, right? Oh my God, I woke up like every 2 hours, just starved, because I'm already in a deficit, right? I woke up like every 2 hours, just starving. Like all I wanted to do was eat, and I couldn't go back to sleep. So I'd like get up and eat a rice cake, put a little bit of peanut butter on it, eat a rice cake, go to bed. 2 hours later, I woke up and my stomach's just like inside out, hungry. Oh my God. Plus, you gain a good amount of water off of it. How much GH did you say? 2.5 units of GH. Listen, on its own, that GH is going to help you with fat loss, and it's going to help to improve your recovery, even at 2.5 units, even if you only do it 4 days. Can you afford to do it a little bit more? Can you boost that up just a little bit? Can you go to 6 days? How about 2 units at 6 days? If you could do that, I think you've got a good little fat loss. Maybe even 2 units, 5 days. I'd do that. I'd leave the MK out though. And everything else looks fine by me. It's going to come down to, your nutrition. Here's the thing. So you said you're trying to get leaner, I think, right? While what do you say? Goal is to recomp while trying to work. So if you're recomping, you're not really dieting hard. You can still work on your bench and squat then. Yeah, man, I think that all sounds good to me. I don't mind that at all. Marks says, has anyone experienced an increase in PSA levels while running 600 milligrams of testosterone per week? Brother, just to throw it out there to you, if you want to make sure that when you get that tested that you haven't had sex or orgasmed, you haven't masturbated, anything, I believe it's just 1 day, but you might want to give it 2 just to be safe. That will elevate your PSA levels. And more than once I've had guys come to me and say, we start working together, we're looking at their labs, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm really worried about my elevated PSA. We have that conversation, they get retested, and they find out that their PSA level wasn't high to begin with. So just throwing that out there to you. And you could look at, one of the 5AR, you could look at finasteride, something like that, to possibly help to manage some of that DHT, specifically from testosterone. That could be definitely a good way to go. No, I don't do a 5K on the rower. I don't know how far I go on it. I just go for time and listen to songs on YouTube. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and as Dusty would say, ring the bell. Yes, thank you, UC Suma. I appreciate you, man. That's a great picture of you too. I like that shot. It's a good one. So I am going to hang out with the wife for the rest of the night. Oh, yeah. So here's what we do. I'm going to give you guys the lowdown on our evening. We've been watching Landman is one of our shows. And what's the other name of that show? Hold on. Let's get a hold of the wife here. We're going to call her up because I want to know. She might have put her phone away for the day. She's really good about that, actually. She's right upstairs, but if she has her phone with her, I'm going to ask her the name of this other show. It's an international show, and there's like 7 seasons. Some of them aren't in English, though. Oh, there she is now. You're not on camera, but I have a question for you. What's the name of that show that we're watching? We called it the British show. That Dexter was in the first season.
Harlan something.
Harlan something. Okay.
Hold on. It's like not just a series. It's like
Each season is
multiple shows.
yeah. Each season is a different program. So we're watching that.
Coben.
Coben?
Harlan Coben.
That's the name of the show?
No, that's the name of the writer who.
Oh, Harlan
because
Coben.
Each season is its own entity, so there's not like an overarching title for all of them.
I gotcha. All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
You look good. All right. Yeah, so this show is kind of I can't even explain it, but we spend an hour from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock watching one of our shows, either that or Landman, and then we go to bed. It's as boring as that. Just booked a hotel room for the 2027 Arnold. Hope to see you there. Hell yeah, man. Appreciate it. I actually do like MK, and am getting the resting fullness comparable to a light cycle. Yeah, if it's good for you, man, then go for it. I'm not a fan, and also too, we discovered that that we did we did like a couple shows on it. It was interesting. One of the research studies, they tested guys after 24 hours of using MK and after 1 week. And they saw some elevation after 24 hours. But after 1 week, there were some people that didn't get any benefit from MK at all. Like, they didn't get any increased growth hormone, I should say, from it. Also, it depends on the individual. Some people will respond better to it than others. Some people who are generally people who are older, who have maybe not as high of growth hormone levels, they may see more benefit from it than, say, a younger guy. Say a guy who's 35 or younger. He's not going to necessarily get as much benefit as a guy who's, say, 40, 50 years old. So the older you are, the more likely you are to get benefit from MK. Also, watch your blood sugar, because I have seen people get insulin sensitivity issues with it, pretty quick. So, yeah, just throwing it out there. What else do we have here? So, is list cardio overrated? No. List cardio is the first place I go for cardio. So if we need somebody to do cardio, I'll usually have them do low intensity cardio. And generally, we'll start with like 25 minutes, something like that. 25 minutes, 5 days a week. Like if we needed to add cardio to the plan, list cardio is going to be the least detrimental as far as like risking, breaking down leg mass, things like that. If you're doing a low amount, you're more likely to prioritize fat as fuel from list cardio. That said, I'm not as married to specifically keeping it list as I used to be, because I found that, yeah, if you go harder, you're going to more prioritize glycogen as fuel, but you will versus fat as fuel, but you'll burn more total calories by doing it. And then what it takes to recover from that, from the EPOC is higher, meaning like the what it takes to recover from that cardio session, you actually continue to burn more calories. So the higher that in cardio intensity is, the more continued benefit you'd get from it. All of that said, it's still really individual. I've seen some people that do really well with HIIT cardio and their legs get even better with it. And then I've seen some people that just feel smashed by it and it really beats them up. So it's an individual thing. I would say though, where do we start? I generally start with the list cardio. And then as we continue to, I was using that analogy of like pressing buttons down the road when we need to get more fat loss, maybe we change the style of cardio and we see, okay, well, what would happen if we had more intensity? I'd rather start with like the least, and then leave us room to increase either in the total time or in the intensity, down the road when we needed to make a change. Yeah, check it out, by the way, guys. A couple people talking about MK. It's on the stream, or it's on the Think Big feed. Scott Stevenson and I did one a while ago. It did really good too. Got like 20,000 views, which the episodes with Scott don't generally get a ton of views. Let's see. Also, A1C goes up significantly after some time, confirmed with blood work, so that is a big downside. Will admit that otherwise a really good drug. Yeah. I think it's like I guess my point was it's going to be really individual, versus I feel like if you just use growth hormone, you're going to get growth hormone. You're going to use 2 units of growth hormone. Guess what? You're getting 2 units of growth hormone. Everybody gets 2. We all get 2 units of growth hormone. How much more effective can PEDs be after a long break? My first real cycle was about a gram of a few compounds, and now just on TRT for 9 months before back on 500 test only. Does the body reset a bit? Yeah, I totally think that it I don't know what the science would be behind that, but I can tell you that if you do a cycle and then you take 9 months off, you're probably going to get a bigger punch from that next cycle than if you were to take 4 weeks off. You know what I'm saying? I also think the body can only grow so much muscle at once. And I've seen that time and again. Usually guys who compete every season or close to every season, like we try to get in like 2 off-season cycles. We push it as far as we can. Then we take a break, clean it up a little bit. Then we have enough time to do like one more push usually before we have to start dieting again. A lot of times it works out that way. And in that second push, we don't see the scale going up as dramatically. So I think that the body can only, maybe it's the body can only grow or will only grow so much muscle at once. And so I'd say that it would make sense that after 9 months, man, I feel like you should be able to hit it hard and grow hard again, Hey, Scott, I have a question regarding your opinion on what is a good ratio would be for the last blue super chat. It's what do you think is a good ratio for? Oh, just came up, I think here. Nope. Test. What is a good ratio for EQ test Deca while using EQ for an AI? That's kind of tricky, man. Just because I've found that if you're running your estrogens higher, let's say you run test and EQ and you're running your estrogens higher, you may be totally fine. But if you then add in Deca, that will make you more sensitive to the side effects of, it'll make you more sensitive to the estrogen. That in itself, I want to make sure that my estrogen is better managed. So, as boring as it would be, man, I would really want to make sure that you had your estrogen, you knew what that estrogen was going to be going into this. If you're using EQ, it's almost like, and I know this is an additional step, but do you know how test and EQ affect you? Do you know at those doses what your estrogen level is most likely going to be? Like, I would want to have that information before we did test Deca EQ. Put it that way. That would be the number one thing, because I do think that we're we're far more likely to have issues with Deca if estrogen is high. Um, Maybe a milder option might be test EQ NPP, because that way, if you do start getting issues, it'd be easier to pull that NPP out. And maybe you don't have it in as quite as high a dose. It's not built up quite as much. You can be more exact with it, that if there were a problem and you were to remove it, you're not waiting several weeks for it to come down. Maybe it's not a fast acting compound, but it's faster, so you'd have a little bit more control. I would almost opt for that personally. In fact, that was my personal favorite cycle, was test EQ and NPP. We got a super chat here. Thank you, sir. I need the pod back on Spotify so I can listen at work. Dude, that's a whole other conversation. I have more. I don't have anything I can share publicly at the moment on this, but there are issues, I'll say, with Spotify, and I'm working to rectify them. I apologize, guys. Believe me, I want to be on Spotify too. We're getting a lot of downloads on Spotify. So the show's not on Spotify now. I had to move that I put it on SoundCloud, which is just a place to have the RSS feed, push it out. So now it's on all the other should be on all the other podcast apps. I'm finding out that some of them haven't picked it up, but we're on Apple Podcast app. We're getting a good amount of views through the RSS feed still without Spotify. I apologize. If you have a specific podcast app that you want to use that's not part of Spotify and you're not seeing it there, let me know, because I want to make sure that I get it linked up. Also, too, I'd suggest check out YouTube Music. It's a separate app. They have YouTube audio playlists and stuff like that. It's a free app. Obviously, it's like YouTube, where you have to pay for the premium service to get rid of ads and all of that. But I believe you can, fast forward them or whatever. You can skip them. They have the skip ads the way they do on YouTube. Definitely check that out, because you can close the app on YouTube Music. In fact, that's what I use YouTube Music now when I'm on my rower. When I'm rowing, I found this, it's all 90s college radio stuff, and it's taking me back to songs I forgot about. But yeah, dude, it's a pain in the butt, man. And this all went down literally the day I got back from the Arnold. So you guys don't know this, but I ended up telling a lot of my clients I needed to take the week off, and basically had a minor mental health situation. It wasn't serious. I mean, that makes it sound more serious than it was, but I needed to just step back and think about my just peace of mind and relax a little bit, because the Arnold is real hectic, all that. I love doing it, but then to come home and have all this content to upload and, try to get everything back together and get all my clients back and oh my God, dude. And then that went out. So it was a pain in the butt. So I apologize, man. Are you in California, Scott? Seems like a lot of YouTubers I find are in California. Close. I'm in Detroit. Not close, right? All right. Listen, guys, I'm going to have to hit it. I appreciate you guys. I have to go watch the shows with my wife. We're going to watch TV. We're going to probably eat. We've got these sugar-free popsicles. They're made with natural juice. So there's I think 15 calories maybe per popsicle. They're really good. Oh my God. Yeah. We've got these. They're a lemon lime one right now that's real good. There's lemon lime and pineapple and mango. And listen, little dieting hack. If you just want something to consume, you need a snack, a 15 calorie popsicle is not going to make or break your diet. If it does, we've got other things to talk about, but it does kind of give you that opportunity to consume something, and it's not going to fill you up, and it's not going to taste like a cheesecake. Right. But if you kind of give yourself that that presence of mind where you're like, I'm going to enjoy this popsicle. It can be a really cool thing, you know? And sometimes we have to kind of hack that little thing in our brain and satisfy it in order to, you know, be able to like chill out for the night. So yeah, we eat one of those just about every night. We have one of those popsicles. They're good. We used to do apples, but we've been on an apple break. We had a couple apples that were like just bad, and then we just got tired of them. So yeah. Anyway, I appreciate the hell out of you guys. Thank you for being here. We still have over 100 freaking people hanging with us. You guys are freaking awesome. I love doing this. I'm going to try to do, so here's the deal. Ron and Dusty are away this week, and they're not going to be back in time to record next week. So I am planning to do another one of these next Monday. So we'll do that on Monday, and then Wednesday we're going to record Blood, Sweat, and Gear if you guys want to go over to the live channel. I've got an episode from Cuba that we need to get out still, so heads up, that's coming out. I've got an off-topic thing for Patreon with Vigorous Steve and I just shooting the shit for 25 minutes. That's out now. So if you're part of Patreon, you haven't seen that, definitely check that out. And thank you guys for all your support. Thank you for showing up here, and thank you for hitting the like button. Like I said, that makes a huge difference, and for all your comments and all that stuff. It never ceases to blow me away every time I hop on one of these live streams with you guys. So, you know, that's all I got to say, right? And let's all try to reduce our expectations just a little bit of what a good workout is supposed to be, and enjoy the workout that we can have. It's not always perfect, right? But it still is great. Like every workout is freaking great. Every workout that you can walk away from was a great workout. So like, you know, maybe you're trying to get your diet together. Maybe you're not nailing it. Just do a little bit better than you did last week. Try to make a little bit of progress. That's all you need to be able to do. And the rest is going to take care of itself as long as you keep that mindset. So thank you guys.